Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. The first thing that felt wrong was the ventilator. Not the sound. Those machines always have a sound. A steady little bellows rhythm, like a metronome you can't unhear once it's in your head. It was the timing. The inhale landed a fraction late, like someone clapping off beat, and then corrected itself. Late, corrected, late again. And each time it stuttered, the plastic tubing twitched against the bed rail with a dry, impatient tap. I stood there with my hand halfway to the call button, listening, trying not to look like I'd never been alone with a patient who couldn't tell me what they felt. The room was dim on purpose, only the hallway light leaking in under the door, and a small lamp on the dresser aimed away from the bed. Everything had that soft amber tone that makes you feel like you're inside a photograph. The ventilator screen glowed green, numbers, waveforms, an alarm icon that wasn't lit. "Come on," I whispered, like the machine was a stubborn dog. I checked the tubing connections anyway. Tugged, pressed, followed the line with my eyes all the way to the track site. The humidifier bottle had condensation on the inside, like a cold drink. The monitor beside it showed a clean oxygen saturation in the high 90s. Heart rate steady, if a little slow. Nothing was wrong, in the way a checklist recognizes wrong. And still, the timing bothered me. I looked at my phone. 11:48 p.m. The screen brightness lit my hand an unhealthy blue. I turned it down and slipped it back into my scrub pocket. Even though I wasn't wearing actual scrubs, just dark joggers and a plain long-sleeve shirt I'd bought specifically because it didn't rustle when I moved. This was not a hospital. This was a fourth-floor condo in a newer building on the edge of Georgetown, Washington, D.C., where the lobby smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and money, and the elevator didn't have buttons that stuck. Even the air up here felt curated, filtered, quiet, expensive. I walked around the bed and checked the other side because it gave me something to do with my hands. The bed was a proper hospital bed, rented, with rails and a trapeze bar above it that was pointless for someone who couldn't use it. A suction canister sat on a rolling stand. A stack of disposable blue pads was tucked into a drawer that hadn't quite closed all the way. On the dresser, a plastic medication organizer labeled with days of the week. A stainless steel tumbler with a straw. A remote control sealed in a clear plastic bag, like someone thought germs were the main enemy here. The patient lay on their back, head turned slightly toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but not tight, and the city's glow slipped in anyway. Their chest rose and fell with the ventilator's assistance, the rise just a touch too perfect, too measured. They weren't old, maybe early 30s, skin pale under the amber light, dark lashes resting against their cheeks like they'd fallen asleep mid-movie. I'd been told not to think of it like sleep. I had been told a lot of things in the last 12 hours. A soft knock came from the open doorway behind me. I turned too fast, my shoulder catching the IV pole and making the bag swing. The pole squeaked in protest. "Sorry," a woman whispered, stepping into the room like she didn't want her feet to make noise. She wore leggings and a Georgetown hoodie, and had the kind of posture that comes from holding yourself together by force. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked like it hurt. She smelled faintly like coffee that had been reheated and forgotten. Mara Bennett, 45, female, moved straight to the ventilator screen without looking at the patient's face. She stared at the numbers, then at the tubing, then at my hands, as if checking whether I'd touched something I shouldn't. "You hearing it too?" I asked. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "The rhythm? Yes, it does that sometimes," she said. She reached out and pressed a button on the machine, not turning anything off, just scrolling. The screen changed, waveforms moving. "It compensates. It's fine." The way she said fine made it sound like a word she'd said 100 times to herself in the bathroom mirror. "Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word." The first thing that felt wrong was the ventilator. Not the sound. Those machines always have a sound. A steady little bellows rhythm, like a metronome you can't unhear once it's in your head. It was the timing. The inhale landed a fraction late, like someone clapping off beat, and then corrected itself. Late, corrected, late again. And each time it stuttered, the plastic tubing twitched against the bed rail with a dry, impatient tap. I stood there with my hand halfway to the call button, listening, trying not to look like I'd never been alone with a patient who couldn't tell me what they felt. The room was dim on purpose, only the hallway light leaking in under the door, and a small lamp on the dresser aimed away from the bed. Everything had that soft amber tone that makes you feel like you're inside a photograph. The ventilator screen glowed green, numbers, waveforms, an alarm icon that wasn't lit. "Come on," I whispered, like the machine was a stubborn dog. I checked the tubing connections anyway. Tugged, pressed, followed the line with my eyes all the way to the track site. The humidifier bottle had condensation on the inside, like a cold drink. The monitor beside it showed a clean oxygen saturation in the high 90s. Heart rate steady, if a little slow. Nothing was wrong in the way a checklist recognizes wrong. And still, the timing bothered me. I looked at my phone. 11:48 p.m. The screen brightness lit my hand an unhealthy blue. I turned it down and slipped it back into my scrub pocket. Even though I wasn't wearing actual scrubs, just dark joggers and a plain long-sleeve shirt I'd bought specifically because it didn't rustle when I moved. This was not a hospital. This was a fourth-floor condo in a newer building on the edge of Georgetown, Washington, D.C., where the lobby smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and money, and the elevator didn't have buttons that stuck. Even the air up here felt curated, filtered, quiet, expensive. I walked around the bed and checked the other side because it gave me something to do with my hands. The bed was a proper hospital bed, rented, with rails and a trapeze bar above it that was pointless for someone who couldn't use it. A suction canister sat on a rolling stand. A stack of disposable blue pads was tucked into a drawer that hadn't quite closed all the way. On the dresser, a plastic medication organizer labeled with days of the week. A stainless steel tumbler with a straw. A remote control sealed in a clear plastic bag, like someone thought germs were the main enemy here. The patient lay on their back, head turned slightly toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but not tight, and the city's glow slipped in anyway. Their chest rose and fell with the ventilator's assistance, the rise just a touch too perfect, too measured. They weren't old, maybe early 30s, skin pale under the amber light, dark lashes resting against their cheeks like they'd fallen asleep mid-movie. I'd been told not to think of it like sleep. I had been told a lot of things in the last 12 hours. A soft knock came from the open doorway behind me. I turned too fast, my shoulder catching the IV pole and making the bag swing. The pole squeaked in protest. "Sorry," a woman whispered, stepping into the room like she didn't want her feet to make noise. She wore leggings and a Georgetown hoodie, and had the kind of posture that comes from holding yourself together by force. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked like it hurt. She smelled faintly like coffee that had been reheated and forgotten. Mara Bennett, 45, female, moved straight to the ventilator screen without looking at the patient's face. She stared at the numbers, then at the tubing, then at my hands, as if checking whether I'd touched something I shouldn't. "You hearing it too?" I asked. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "The rhythm?" "Yes, it does that sometimes," she said. She reached out and pressed a button on the machine, not turning anything off, just scrolling. The screen changed, waveforms moving. "It compensates. It's fine." The way she said fine made it sound like a word she'd said 100 times to herself in the bathroom mirror. I nodded like I accepted that. I wanted to. I wanted the world to stay inside the little boundaries I understood. Machine makes noise, you check connections, you move on. But my attention kept sliding back to the patient's mouth, taped slightly open, the skin around the track's site faintly irritated. Mara's eyes followed mine and then snapped away. "You're Eli?" she asked, too brightly, like we were meeting at a barbecue, and not hovering over a person who couldn't wake up. "Yeah, Eli Mercer." I kept my voice low. "The agency said you wanted someone overnight so you could sleep." "I do," she said. Then she corrected herself. "I want to try. I can't." Her jaw tightened. "I can't do the nights anymore, not alone." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a sob. It was the flat admission of someone who'd hit a limit and was quietly furious about it. I adjusted the IV pole back into place, more carefully this time. "Okay, I'm here." Mara watched me for a beat, then moved toward the dresser and opened a folder that had been sitting there, thick with paperwork in plastic sleeves. She didn't offer it to me yet. "You've done home care before," she said, not quite a question. "Yes," I said, "mostly post-op stuff. Stroke patients, hospice, a couple times." I didn't add that those were always in houses that smelled like laundry detergent and soup, not like this condo with its quiet hum of HVAC and its polished floors. Mara nodded, like she was pulling facts from a list she'd memorized, so she wouldn't have to think too hard. "There's a schedule," she said, "a routine." And she stopped, swallowed, and tried again. "And rules. Okay." Her gaze flicked to the patient again, and for the first time I saw it, how she kept her eyes on the machines, the tubing, the medication, anything but the face. It wasn't denial exactly. It was self-preservation. "What's their name?" I asked, because I realized I didn't actually know if I was allowed to say it aloud. Mara's mouth tightened. "Noah." She said it like a password. I repeated it softly. "Noah." The ventilator sighed again, that offbeat hitch. Tap, tap, tubing against rail. Mara noticed my eyes go to it, and she lifted a hand, palm out, a small stop sign. "Please don't touch anything unless you have to." I won't, I said quickly. I'm just listening. Good, she said, and the word came out sharper than she probably meant. She exhaled and pressed her lips together, then softened. I'm sorry. I've had people. She glanced at the folder, as if the folder contained the ghosts of previous caregivers. I can't do surprises right now. I understood that more than I wanted to. I'd taken this job for the money, yes. The agency had said private client, overnight monitoring, high pay. And I tried not to let my brain race ahead with what that might mean. Rent was due. My student loan autopay was about to bounce. I told myself it was just another shift. But underneath, that was the other reason, the one I didn't say out loud. I needed something that would keep me awake. For the last 2 months, sleep had become a place my mind used against me. Not nightmares, exactly. More like a loop. I'd wake up convinced I'd forgotten something important, something that would ruin me. And I'd check my phone, my bank account, my locked door, my stove knobs, my calendar, over and over until dawn. The fear wasn't loud, it was methodical. It wore me down. An overnight job sounded like structure, a reason to be awake, a justification. Mara pulled a chair up beside the bed, sat, then immediately stood again, as if sitting felt wrong. She picked up the folder and finally handed it to me. Inside were typed pages, medication times, feeding tube instructions, ventilator settings, emergency contacts. Everything was cleanly organized and highlighted in different colors. Someone had worked hard to make chaos look manageable. At the top, in bold, do not stimulate patient. Under that, another line, no family visits overnight. No visitors. I looked up at Mara. Stimulation like loud noise, lights. Talking to him, she said. Touching him. Moving him more than you have to for care. She said him and then flinched, like she hated the pronoun. The doctors were clear. Why? I asked before I could stop myself. Mara's eyes hardened, but not at me, at the question, at the universe that allowed it. Because he isn't supposed to wake up, she said, and the sentence landed heavy in the room, heavier than the machines, heavier than the city glow. Then she added quickly, as if patching a crack, not yet. It would be bad. Bad how? She didn't say. The folder didn't say. The folder said what to do if the feeding pump alarmed, and what number to call if the oxygen saturation dropped, and how to suction if needed. It had no section for what to do if not supposed to wake up became woke up anyway. I flipped a page and saw a sticky note attached near the back, handwritten in sharp, cramped letters. If anything changes, call me first. Not the agency, me. I looked at her. Even if it's an emergency, Mara's throat bobbed. If it's an emergency, you call 911. Obviously. She said obviously like she was trying to anchor herself to something normal. But if it's something else, you call me something else. A change that wasn't a code blue emergency, but wasn't routine either. A category wide enough to hide anything. From the hall, a second voice drifted in, male, older, tired. Mara, are we doing this or not? A man stepped into view, leaning against the doorframe like he'd been standing there for a while, listening. He wore slacks and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the kind of outfit someone puts on when they can't afford to look undone. There was a faint red mark on his nose bridge, like he'd taken his glasses off recently and rubbed too hard. Dr. Peter Lang, 58, male, didn't smile. He looked at the ventilator first, then at Noah, then at me. This is the overnight caregiver, he asked. Yes, Mara said. Eli. Dr. Lang's eyes narrowed slightly. not unkindly, more like a clinician assessing a new variable. You have experience with vents. Some, I said. I'm not a respiratory therapist, but I can monitor, suction if needed, call if that's fine, he said, cutting me off. You're not here to adjust settings. You're here to observe and intervene only if there's a clear medical issue. Mara's shoulders lifted a fraction, then settled. Relief and tension in the same motion. Dr. Lang stepped into the room far enough that the hallway light sharpened the edges of his face. Eli, listen carefully. He spoke quietly, but there was a firmness to it that made my spine straighten. Overnight, the goal is stability. No stimulation. No attempts at interaction. If you think you see something, you document it. If there's an emergency, you call emergency services. Otherwise, you call Mara. I glanced down at the folder again, then back at Noah. Their eyelids didn't move. Their fingers lay relaxed on the sheet, nails clean, skin slightly dry. The ventilator's rhythm hitched once more. Tap. Dr. Lang followed my gaze. The machine compensates. It's within parameters. It just sounds off, I said. It's a sound you'll get used to, he replied. Then he looked at Mara. We need to decide. Decide what? I asked, before my brain could label it as none of my business. Mara's eyes met mine, and something in her expression shifted, hesitation, calculation, fear. Dr. Lang's jaw tightened, the muscles working like he was chewing on a word he didn't want to say. Mara glanced at the folder in my hands, then at the door, then back to Noah. There's something, she said, and her voice dropped even lower, that we haven't told you yet. Dr. Lang's gaze sharpened. Mara, I'm not doing another night of half-truths, she snapped, the first real heat I'd heard from her. Then to me softer, but it's late. And if we tell you now, you might walk. My stomach did a small, slow turn, not panic, just that instinctive tightening when you realize you've stepped onto a surface that might not hold your weight. Dr. Lang exhaled through his nose. We can discuss it in the kitchen, he said, as if changing rooms could change the reality of it. Mara didn't move. She watched my face, waiting, and I realized the choice was already in the air, sitting between the hum of the ventilator and the muted city outside the window. Do I ask now, before I'm alone in the dark, with a patient who isn't supposed to wake up, or do I nod, take the folder, and let the night explain it to me? I tightened my grip on the paperwork until the plastic sleeve creaked. Tell me, I said, my voice barely above the ventilator's next imperfect inhale. Mara's lips parted. Dr. Lang looked away, and the ventilator, like it had an opinion, hitched again late, corrected while Noah lay still, unaware of the conversation rearranging the room around them. The power blinked out at 1:12 a.m., not a dramatic blackout, just a soft, collective inhale of silence, like the building had closed its eyes for a second too long. The lamp on the dresser went dark. The hallway light under the door vanished. The city glow outside the curtains dimmed to a dull smear. And then the machines reacted. The ventilator let out a sharp, electronic chirp and switched tones lower, more insistent. The heart monitor stuttered, then steadied, now running on battery. The feeding pump alarmed once, a flat beep that cut through the room and then stopped. I stood frozen for half a second, my brain scrambling to sort what mattered first. Battery-backed devices were doing their jobs. That was good. Building-wide outages happened. This was Georgetown, not a war zone. I forced myself to breathe through my nose and count. 1, 2. I crossed the room and checked the ventilator screen. Battery indicator, 93%. Plenty of time, assuming the outage didn't drag on. The waveform still rolled, still green. The rhythm, though late, corrected. Late felt more obvious in the sudden quiet. "Okay," I murmured, not to Noah, but to myself. "Okay." I pulled my phone out. No signal issue. No emergency alerts yet. I opened the building's resident app, nothing posted. I hesitated, thumb hovering, then called Mara. It rang once, twice. She picked up on the third ring, breathless. "What happened?" "Power outage," I said. "Machines are on battery. Everything looks stable." A pause. I could hear movement on her end, footsteps maybe. "How long?" "Just now." 1 minute maybe." "Okay," she said then, quickly. "Don't touch anything. The ventilator battery should last hours. The building has a generator for common areas, not individual units." "I know," I said. "I'm just monitoring." Another pause, longer this time. She stopped, restarted. "Is he the same?" I looked at Noah. Chest rising and falling, the tape at his mouth unmoved. His fingers were still loose on the sheet. "Yes," I said, "same." "Good," she exhaled, a long, shaky sound she probably didn't realize I could hear. "I'm coming back." "What?" "You said." "I know what I said," she snapped, then softened immediately. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, maybe less." "Mara, you don't have to." "I do," she said. Just keep him stable. Call me if anything changes." She hung up before I could argue. I stared at the phone for a second, then slid it back into my pocket and turned back to the room. The battery alarm on the feeding pump blinked yellow, not urgent yet, but impatient. I silenced it and made a note on the clipboard, my handwriting smaller than usual. Outside, somewhere down the street, a car alarm started up and then cut off. The building felt hollow without its usual hum, like a refrigerator unplugged. 10 minutes passed, then 15. The ventilator's rhythm didn't change, but my awareness of it did. Every hitch felt louder, more intentional. I found myself watching Noah's throat, the track site, the slight movement of skin with each assisted breath. I had to stop myself from reaching out, from doing something just to break the stillness. Don't stimulate. I paced instead, heel to toe, careful not to make the floor creak. I checked the suction canister. I checked the IV bag level. I checked the battery indicators again, even though they hadn't budged much. At 1:34 a.m., the heart monitor blipped slightly faster. Not alarming, just a few beats per minute up, from low 40s to high 40s, still within a range I'd seen before, especially during routine care. But I wasn't doing routine care. I leaned closer, watching the monitor like it might confess something. Noah's eyelids fluttered. It was subtle, a tremor more than a movement, like a REM twitch. If I hadn't been staring, I would have missed it. My stomach tightened. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I stepped back, hands up, palms open, as if that mattered. The rule wasn't just about touching. It was about presence, about noise, about pulling someone toward the surface when they weren't meant to be there yet. His heart rate ticked up again. 51. "No," I said softly. "No, no." I checked the oxygen saturation. Still good. I checked the ventilator settings without touching them. Eyes only, everything nominal. Another flutter. This time the eyelids lifted a fraction. Not open, just not fully closed. The ventilator hitched. Late, corrected. My mind did the thing it always did when I was tired and afraid. It sprinted ahead. If he woke up, what did that mean? Panic. Fighting the ventilator. Self-extubation wasn't possible with a track, but agitation could cause all kinds of problems. Increased oxygen demand, desaturation, alarms, a cascade. And underneath that, a quieter thought. What if this is what they were afraid of? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I flinched hard enough that the IV pole rattled. I cursed under my breath and grabbed it. A text from Mara, in elevator. Power still out. Before I could respond, Noah made a sound. It wasn't a word. It wasn't even a vocalization, not really. More like a breath pushed against resistance. A faint rasp that came from deep in his chest and scraped its way out. The heart monitor jumped. 62. Okay, I said, louder now despite myself. Okay, Noah, I stopped. Talking. Stimulation. My mouth snapped shut. The room felt suddenly too small, the air thick. I forced myself to slow down, to do what the training said, assess, don't react. Noah's fingers curled. Not a reflex, not a spasm. They curled and then relaxed, like someone testing their hand after it's been asleep. My own hands started to shake. I thought of my nights at home, lying in bed, convinced I'd missed something catastrophic because I'd been too tired to notice it at the right moment. I thought of the way I'd taken this job to stay awake, to be useful, to be in control. Control was slipping through my fingers now, measured in heartbeats. The ventilator alarm changed tone again, still not critical, but closer. The battery indicator dipped to 89%. Still fine, still fine. Noah's eyelids lifted, this time unmistakably. They didn't open all the way, just enough for me to see the whites, the dark iris sliding beneath. His gaze didn't focus. It drifted, unfixed, like someone coming out of anesthesia. A whine built in my throat. Don't, I told myself. Don't. The rule said don't stimulate. The training said if a patient shows signs of distress, intervene. Which rule mattered more when the power was out and the doctor wasn't here, and the person in front of you was waking up when they weren't supposed to? My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. Noah's chest hitched, not the machine this time, but him. A breath fighting the ventilator's timing, pushing against it. The ventilator alarm went from yellow to orange. I moved before I decided to. I reached for the call button on the wall, hospital grade, tied into nothing now that the building's power was down, and then my hand hovered, useless. I grabbed my phone instead and called Mara. Straight to voicemail. Shit, I whispered. I looked at Noah, at his eyes fluttering, his fingers twitching again, more insistently this time. The heart monitor climbed into the 70s. If he fully woke up, this would get messy fast. If I sedated him, no, I didn't have orders. I didn't have meds. If I did nothing, the feeding pump alarm started up again, shrill now, battery low warning flashing. And from the hallway, faint but real, I heard a knock. Not at the door, on the wall, 3 quick taps followed by a muffled voice. Hello, a man called. Is someone in there? We're checking units, building security, or maintenance, or someone else entirely. Noah's eyes opened wider. The ventilator alarm escalated. The knock came again, louder, and I stood there, caught between rules and instincts, and a patient who was waking up at exactly the wrong moment, knowing that whatever I chose next would change the night in a way I couldn't undo. I held up a finger toward the door, a useless reflex, like the person knocking could see me through drywall. 1 second, I called, pitching my voice low and steady on purpose. The knock stopped. The muffled voice came back, closer to the door now. Building maintenance. We're checking units with medical equipment. Backup generators acting up. That explained the timing, the outage, the app silence. It also meant they might insist on coming in. Behind me, Noah made another sound, this one sharper. A short exhale that pushed past the ventilator's rhythm and threw it off completely. The alarm jumped to red for half a second, then settled back to orange, angry, and impatient. I turned my body sideways, blocking the bed from the doorway as much as possible, and cracked the door just enough to see a sliver of the hall. A man in a navy jacket stood there with a flashlight angled down. Mid-30s, clipboard tucked under one arm. The light flicked up accidentally and caught my face. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to blind you. We had a report of a power dip on this floor." "We have a patient," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Ventilator. Everything's stable." He nodded, eyes already drifting past me, trying to look into the room. "Yeah, that's why I'm here. We need to make sure the outlet is on the emergency circuit." "It is," I said, a beat too fast. "We've checked." That wasn't entirely true. I knew the outlet was red, hospital standard, but I hadn't traced the line. My pulse thudded in my ears. The man hesitated. "I still need to," behind me, something clattered. Not loud, just the soft plastic on metal sound of the feeding pump line slipping against the stand as Noah's arm twitched again, stronger this time. The ventilator alarm spiked in response, shrill now, impossible to ignore. The maintenance guy's eyes snapped to the room. "Is he okay?" "Yes," I said. "He just needs quiet." The word quiet felt flimsy as soon as it left my mouth. Noah's chest began to fight the machine in earnest now. His breaths came shallow and fast, out of sync. The heart monitor climbed into the 80s. This was no longer a subtle change. "Sir," the man said, firmer. "If there's a problem, I need to see." "I need you to give me 2 minutes," I said, and hated how close my voice was to cracking. 2 minutes, please." He looked at my face, really looked like he was weighing something. Liability, procedure, human instinct. 2, he said finally. "Then I'm coming back." He stepped away, his shoes squeaking faintly on the hallway tile. I shut the door gently and locked it. My hands were slick with sweat now. I wiped them on my pants and turned fully back to Noah. "Okay," I said under my breath. "Okay, attempt 1. Fix the machine, not the man." I crouched by the ventilator, eyes scanning the screen. The waveform showed classic patient ventilator asynchrony, Noah initiating breaths that didn't match the set timing. The machine was compensating, but it wasn't winning. I reached for the control knob, then stopped myself. Dr. Lang's voice echoed in my head. "You're not here to adjust settings." I didn't touch the settings. Instead, I adjusted the tubing, checked for kink, straightened a loop that had shifted when the power went out. I repositioned the humidifier bottle slightly, making sure condensation wasn't pooling. For a moment, just a moment, the alarm softened. Noah's breathing synced better. His heart rate dipped into the 70s. Relief washed through me so hard my knees went weak. Then his eyes focused. They landed on me, not sharp, not fully awake, but aware enough to track movement. A furrow appeared between his brows, confusion tightening his face. "No," I whispered. "No, no." He tried to lift his head. The ventilator alarm screamed. Attempt 1 failed. I backed away, hands up again, forcing myself to stop hovering. My presence was stimulation. My movement, my voice, my shadow, all of it could be pulling him further up. I turned away from the bed and faced the far wall, counting breaths. In, out. The city glow through the curtains pulsed faintly as another building across the street kicked on a generator. Behind me, Noah gasped. I spun back despite myself. His right hand was flexing, fingers clawing weakly at the sheet. His eyes were open now, wide and unfocused, panic blooming fast. He tried to speak. Nothing came out but a wet, broken sound around the track. "Hey," I said, then bit the word off like it burned. Talking. Stimulation. But letting him panic felt worse. Attempt 2, call for help, even if it breaks the rules. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My thumb hovered over the call button. Mara's sticky note flashed in my mind. "Call me first," her voicemail. Dr. Lang's absence. The maintenance guy in the hall. Noah's oxygen saturation dipped 92, then 90. I hit call. The line rang once and died. No bars. The outage had knocked out something in the building's internal signal booster. My phone showed a useless gray, no service. I laughed, a short, ugly sound, then clamped my mouth shut. Attempt 2 failed. The ventilator battery indicator dropped to 84%. The feeding pump alarm wailed again, insistent, flashing red now. I moved to silence it and nearly tripped over the chair Mara had dragged in earlier. The edge caught my shin hard. Pain flared white hot and immediate. "Shit," I hissed, hopping once before planting my foot and riding it out. My leg throbbed, pulse matching the alarms. Noah jerked at the sound. The maintenance knock came again, louder, closer to the door. "Sir, time's up. Don't open it," I told myself. "Don't open it." I hobbled to the door anyway, adrenaline carrying me. I cracked it just enough to speak. "He's waking up," I said, the truth tumbling out. "I need a doctor now." The man's face shifted instantly, all procedure gone. Is he supposed to wake up? No. That single word felt heavier than everything else I'd said tonight. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'm calling EMS." He raised his radio. Behind me, a loud bang echoed through the room. I whipped around, heart in my throat. Noah's arm had fallen from the bed rail. His hand had knocked the stainless steel tumbler off the dresser. It rolled across the floor, clanging, water sloshing out. Just that. Not a seizure. Not violence. Gravity and weak coordination. Misdirection. Explainable. But the sound pushed him further into panic. His chest heaved, breaths ragged, completely out of sync now. Ventilator alarm went continuous. The maintenance guy was already talking into his radio. "Unit 407, medical emergency. Ventilator patient waking, power outage." Noah's eyes locked onto mine again. This time, there was no mistaking it. He knew he was trapped in his body. He shook his head, a tiny, frantic motion, and mouthed something around the track. A word I couldn't hear. "Help." My leg throbbed. My arms felt like lead. The room smelled faintly of spilled water and warm plastic. I crossed back to the bed, rules shattering under the weight of reality. I took Noah's hand. His grip was weak, but it was there. Real, human. "I've got you," I said, breaking the rule completely now, not caring. "You're not alone." The ventilator alarm blared. The battery indicator ticked down another percent. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, far too far. And as Noah squeezed my fingers, grounding himself in the only thing he could feel, I realized with sick clarity that whatever had kept him asleep this long was gone. And there was no putting him back now. The sirens got louder, then weirdly quieter, as if the sound had to fight the building's concrete before it could reach us. Noah's fingers were digging into my hand now. Not hard, he didn't have the strength, but desperate, like he was anchoring himself to the only thing that made sense. His eyes kept skittering from my face to the ventilator screen to the door. Orange alarm. Continuous. Battery. 81%. My shin pulsed with each heartbeat. I could feel warm sweat running down my ribs under my shirt. The room smelled like damp metal and warm plastic, and the faint medicinal sweetness of whatever had been running through the feeding line before it started screaming. In the doorway, the maintenance guy spoke into his radio again. They're on their way. Elevators down, I think. Stairwells clear. Okay, I said, and heard how thin my voice sounded. Noah jerked. The ventilator whined higher. I glanced at the track site. The ties were secure, but his hand was drifting upward, searching, the way panicked hands do. Hey, I said, then swallowed the word. Noah, listen. His gaze snapped to mine. He was fully awake now, in the brutal sense, aware enough to be terrified, not aware enough to understand why. He mouthed something again. I caught maybe one syllable. No. I couldn't tell if he meant no, don't touch me, or no, not again, or no, please. The maintenance guy shifted his weight. Do you have a backup bag? He asked. It took me a second to translate. Bag valve mask, manual ventilation. I looked at the equipment corner suction canister, tubing, gloves, spare track inner cannulas in sterile packaging. No obvious ambu bag. Then I remembered the bottom drawer that hadn't been fully closed, the blue pads. I dropped Noah's hand gently. His fingers tried to follow mine, and then fell back onto the sheet, trembling. I'm going to grab something, I said, more to myself than him, and yanked the drawer open. Under the pads, a sealed clear plastic pouch with a hand pump inside. BVM, adult size. A simple oxygen mask tucked beside it. Relief hit, sharp and immediate, then dissolved when I realized what it meant. If I needed the bag, something had already failed. I pulled it out and set it on the bed within reach. The plastic crackled loud in the quiet, and Noah flinched, eyes going wide. Easy, I said. It's okay. It's okay. It was okay. It was just what I had. A knock harder this time came from the front of the unit, not the bedroom. The maintenance guy glanced back down the hall. They're here, he said. Fire key got them in. Footsteps. Multiple. Fast. The door opened, voices echoing in the living area controlled, practiced urgency. 2 people appeared in the bedroom doorway moments later, both wearing dark uniforms with reflective strips, headlamps clipped to their shoulders. One carried a hard case. The other had a folded stair chair strapped to their back. Janelle Ortiz, 32, female, moved first, eyes sweeping the room like a scanner. Ryan Feldman, 41, male, followed, already pulling gloves on. Who's the caregiver? Ortiz asked. I am, I said. Eli. He's waking up, and the ventilator battery. Ortiz was at the bedside in 2 steps, looking at Noah's face, then the track, then the ventilator. Okay. Hey, Noah, my name's Janelle, you're safe. Her voice was calm in a way that made my throat tight. Noah's eyes locked onto her, then darted back to me like he didn't trust calmness coming from a stranger. Feldman opened the hard case. Do we have paperwork? DNR? Vent settings? What's the diagnosis? I grabbed the folder off the dresser with shaking fingers and shoved it toward him. There. Vent settings meds. Rule says. I stopped myself from saying it. Do not stimulate. It sounded ridiculous now. Ortiz pointed at the ventilator display. He's fighting the rate. What sedation is he on? I hesitated. That was the part they hadn't told me. The meds list had names and times, but it didn't say why. No idea, I admitted. Mara, his caregiver, she said he isn't supposed to wake up. Feldman's eyebrows lifted. That's not a medical directive. From the hall, Mara's voice cut through, hoarse and too loud in her own panic. Eli, she appeared in the doorway, hair half fallen from its tight tie, cheeks flushed from running stairs. Her eyes went straight to Noah. This time she couldn't avoid his face because his eyes were open and begging. She froze. For a second, she looked like she'd been punched. Then she lunged forward. Noah, no, please. Ortiz stepped between her and the bed without being aggressive, just blocking line of sight like she'd done it 100 times. Ma'am, who are you? Mara Bennett, she said, breath hitching. This is her voice broke. I'm responsible, please. He can't be awake. Feldman held up the folder, flipping pages. Ma'am, is there a physician order, a DNR? A legal guardian document? Mara's eyes flicked to the sticky note in the folder, then away. Dr. Lang he handles, Ortiz cut in, still calm. We need the why, we need the plan, because right now he's hypoxic and panicking. As if to prove her point, Noah's oxygen saturation dipped again. 88, 86. The alarm changed pitch. Feldman looked at Ortiz. We bag him, get better control. Noah shook his head weakly, eyes huge. His hand went toward the track ties again. I reacted without thinking, catching his wrist too firm, too fast. He jerked, terrified, and the movement tugged the tubing. The ventilator alarm screamed, red now. Hey, Ortiz snapped, not at Noah, at me. Gentle. Sorry, I said, and my voice cracked. I'm sorry. My shin flared with pain as I shifted weight. The room tilted slightly at the edges, not fainting, just adrenaline and exhaustion stacking up. Ortiz leaned in close to Noah's face. Noah, listen to me. You have a tube in your neck helping you breathe. I'm going to help you breathe another way for a minute. You need to let us. Noah stared at her like she was speaking through glass. Feldman disconnected the ventilator tubing at the track connector with quick, precise hands. The sudden silence was worse than any alarm, a hollow, vulnerable quiet. Ortiz took the bag valve device from the bed, snapped it onto the track adapter, and began ventilating manually. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Each breath was visible. Each breath was work. Noah's chest rose, then fell. His eyes fluttered, panic still there, but held at bay by the rhythm she gave him. The oxygen saturation crawled back up 87, 89, 91. A small lull, just enough for me to feel the tremor in my arms and realize my jaw was clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Feldman glanced at the ventilator. Battery's fine. The problem is he's asynchronous. He needs sedation, or he needs to be on a mode that supports spontaneous breaths better. We're not doing that here. Mara grabbed Feldman's sleeve. No sedation, she said, too sharp. He has brain, Ortiz didn't stop bagging. Ma'am, say it clearly. Mara's face crumpled. He had a fall, a brain injury. They kept him down so swelling wouldn't, she swallowed. If he gets agitated, his pressure can spike. It can kill him. Feldman looked at the folder again. Why is he at home on a vent if he's that unstable? Mara's eyes darted toward the window, toward the floor, anywhere but the question. It was what we could do. Hospital insurance. The words came out tangled, half-truths wrapped in real desperation. Ortiz said, okay, we're moving him. Now. No, Mara said, voice rising. Dr. Lang said. Feldman cut her off. Dr. Lang isn't here, we are. He's awake, fighting the vent, and you lost power. This is not safe. Noah made a wet cough against the bag, and suddenly there was a gurgling sound, secretions shifting, partial obstruction. Ortiz paused one beat, eyes narrowing. Suction, she said. My hands moved before my brain caught up. I grabbed the suction catheter, tore open the sterile pack with trembling fingers, connected it to the tubing. The canister gurgled when I tested it. Ortiz kept bagging with one hand and nodded for me to proceed. I'd done suctioning before, but never on someone whose eyes were open and watching me like I was about to drown them. Noah's gaze locked on my face. He mouthed no again, clearer now. "I know," I whispered, breaking every rule. "I know, I'm sorry. You need it." I inserted the catheter carefully. Resistance, then release. The suction pulled thick secretions grayish, streaked with something darker. Old blood from irritation, maybe. Or something worse. Noah gagged around the track, body bucking. Ortiz steadied the bagging rhythm, and Feldman put a firm hand on Noah's shoulder, not restraining, just grounding. The oxygen dipped 89, 87, then climbed back as the airway cleared. Noah's eyes squeezed shut, tears gathering at the corners. When I pulled the catheter out, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "That's the cost," my mind said stupidly, clinically. "This is what it looks like when you keep someone alive against their panic." Ortiz handed the bag to Feldman and reached for the stair chair. "We need to transfer him onto our portable ventilator in the hall. Elevator's out, so we're going downstairs. It's going to be rough." Mara's face went white. He can," Feldman said, and there was steel under the comm now. "Or he dies here when that battery runs out, or he pulls his track out in panic." Noah opened his eyes again, exhausted now, fear dulled into a hollow, stunned look. He stared up at the ceiling, and his fingers found mine once more weak, involuntary. I squeezed back, throat burning. Outside the bedroom, the hallway was lit by flashlights and emergency exit signs. The building felt like a ship listing in the dark. Somewhere below, a door slammed. Somewhere farther away, another alarm chirped. Ortiz looked at me. "Eli, you coming?" I looked at Noah, at the folder, at Mara shaking, her carefully built routine collapsing. I nodded, because there was no version of this where I could step away and pretend I hadn't been the one in the room when he opened his eyes. Feldman started bagging again, squeeze, release, while Ortiz and the maintenance guy cleared a path. And as we moved Noah toward the doorway, into the dark hall, I realized the point we'd reached wasn't just medical. It was official. Strangers, paperwork, radios, questions that didn't have clean answers. Whatever had been happening in this condo at night, under amber light and rules written in bold, was now out in the open, carried down the stairs one manual breath at a time. They took Noah down the stairs in stages, pausing on each landing like mountaineers rationing air. I followed because no one told me not to, and because my hands still smelled faintly of saline and plastic, and I didn't trust myself to sit alone in the quiet. My shin ached in a dull, blooming way that promised to bruise the size of my palm by morning. Every step sent a small protest up my leg, but it kept me present. Count the steps. Watch the bag. Don't trip. By the time we reached the lobby, the power had come back on in patches. Ceiling lights flickered awake with a tired hum. Citrus cleaner smell returned, too bright after the night upstairs. Someone had propped the front doors open, and cold air rolled in, carrying traffic noise and the distant whine of sirens that weren't for us anymore. The paramedics transferred Noah onto their portable ventilator. It was quieter than the home unit, smoother in its timing, like it knew how to meet him halfway. His eyes were half closed now, lashes damp. When the straps clicked into place on the stretcher, he flinched, but didn't fight. Exhaustion had taken the edge off the panic. Mara hovered, hands fluttering uselessly at her sides. Her hoodie was inside out. She kept starting to speak and stopping, words stacking up behind her teeth. "I should ride with him," she said finally. Ortiz nodded. "You can." Mara turned to me then, like she just remembered I existed. Her face was blotchy, eyes red, but dry, someone who'd burned through tears earlier and had nothing left. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not for the rules, not for the half-truths. Just sorry, broad and heavy." I didn't know what to do with that, so I nodded. Feldman handed me a clipboard. "We'll need a statement later. You did what you could." The words felt thin. What you could covered a lot of ground. Covered breaking rules. Covered holding a man down so he wouldn't pull a tube out of his own neck. Covered the moment I decided to talk when I wasn't supposed to. I watched the ambulance doors close. The red lights washed the lobby in a rhythm that made my eyes ache. Then the vehicle pulled away, and the building sighed back into its normal-shaped doors swinging shut. Someone muttering about the elevator, a dog barking somewhere above us. Normality rushed in like water through a crack. A police officer appeared, young, careful, notebook already out. Questions followed, measured and procedural. Names, times. When did the power go out? When did he wake up? Did anyone touch the ventilator settings? Had I administered medication? "No," I said. "No, no." Maintenance guy backed me up about the outage, the radio call. Dr. Lang's name came up. The officer wrote it down, pen scratching steadily. "You'll probably hear from someone," he said, not unkindly. "Hospital, maybe adult protective services. Standard, given you're listening to Mia Horror Stories, and today's story is, I woke up to 37 missed calls, all from my own number. The screen will stay completely black, letting your imagination do all the work. No visuals, no noise, just a story that creeps under your skin. Don't skip a second, because every detail builds to the chilling end you won't want to miss." I woke up with my cheek stuck to the screen. Not in the cute, drooly way you fall asleep on a couch during a movie. More like I'd collapsed face first onto my phone at some point, and my skin had decided to bond with warm glass. My right ear was buzzing with the thin, electric echo of a missed vibration. The room was dim enough that the digital clock on the microwave in the kitchenette glowed like a tiny emergency exit sign. 6:12 a.m. Outside my bedroom window, the January sky over Chicago had that dirty pewter color it gets before sunrise. The city quiet, but not really, just muffled, like someone threw a blanket over it. I blinked grit out of my eyes, peeled myself off the phone, and the lock screen lit up. 37 missed calls. Caller me. For a second, my brain tried to file it under weird iPhone thing and move on. That folder is fat with harmless nonsense, Bluetooth hiccups, autocorrect crimes, the occasional phantom alarm I swear I didn't set. But the number was mine. Same area code, same saved contact name, my own stupid selfie icon. I sat up too fast, and the sheet slid down my shoulder. The air felt cold and dry, like the radiator had been trying and failing all night. Somewhere in the building, a pipe ticked, then ticked again, a patient metal sound. My thumb hovered over the list, the way you hover over a bruise to see if it hurts as much as you remember. The calls were clustered between 2:03 a.m. and 2:41 a.m. A string of attempts like someone kept hitting redial, angry at voicemail. There were also 3 voicemails. My stomach did a small, unhelpful flip. I pressed play on the first one and held the phone to my ear. Static, soft at first, then louder like someone rubbing a cheap mic. Under it, a faint background noise, a low whoosh, maybe traffic, maybe wind, and then a click as if the phone got jostled. I heard breathing. Not dramatic breathing, just someone breathing too close to a microphone. Then my own voice said, very calmly, "Hey, pick up." I pulled the phone away and stared at it like it had lied to me. It wasn't a recording from a movie or a prank voice filter. It was my voice, the little nasal edge I hear on videos, the specific way I round my vowels from growing up in Ohio, the faint rasp that shows up when I'm tired. My throat went dry. I swallowed, and it didn't help. I played the voicemail again. Same thing. Static, breathing, traffic wind, my voice. "Hey, pick up." The second voicemail started with the same hiss, then a longer stretch of nothing, and then, "You need to pick up right now." The word right punched harder than it should have, because it was said like someone was trying not to panic. The third voicemail didn't have my voice at all. It was just sound, something bumping, then a soft thud, then what might have been a car door closing far away. A distant horn, a cough, and then silence until it cut off. I sat there with the phone in my hand, trying to make sense of it in a way that didn't involve spiraling. My brain offered options like a menu. Option A, someone spoofed my number. Option B, my carrier glitched and somehow looped calls. Option C, I sleep-called myself in the middle of the night, like people sleepwalk, and left voicemails because what exactly? I looked at the top of the screen, at the little battery icon. 18%. That made a small kind of sense. If my phone had been calling for 40 minutes straight, it would chew through battery. My hand went automatically to the nightstand. My charger cable lay there, unplugged, coiled like a dead worm. I had meant to plug it in. I always mean to. I never do. That's one of my flaws, if you want it labeled. I live like tomorrow's version of me is a separate employee who will handle consequences. I got out of bed, and my feet hit the floorboards, cold enough that it felt like stepping onto a garage floor. The apartment smelled faintly of last night's garlic and detergent. I padded into the kitchenette, past the small stack of mail I kept ignoring, and poured water from the Brita. The tap hissed, then clanked as it warmed up. I drank too fast, and it hurt going down. My phone buzzed again. A call came in. I stared at it until it stopped ringing and turned into another missed call. The vibration had a different feel now, in daylight-ish, like it was less ominous and more insistent. Like a person knocking on a door when they can see you through the peephole. My heart had started doing that fast, shallow drumbeat that makes your fingers feel slightly unreal. I set the glass down hard enough that water sloshed over the rim and onto my hand. The reasonable thing to do was call someone. That was the thought that arrived first and stayed like a stern adult in the room. The other thought was, if you call anyone, you'll sound insane. I opened the contacts and thumbed to Mara before I could stop myself. She picked up on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "Ellie, what time is it?" I exhaled like I'd been holding air. "Sorry, I'm sorry. Are you awake?" A pause, then the soft rustle of sheets. "I'm awake now. What's going on?" My phone, I woke up to. I glanced at the screen again, because even saying it felt like a dare. 37 missed calls from my own number. Mara didn't immediately laugh, which I appreciated. She made a small sound that could have been her brain switching gears. "Okay," she said slowly, like spoofing. "I don't know. There are voicemails. 2 of them sound like me." Another pause, longer this time. "Ellie, are you sure it's you?" "That's the thing. It is. It's my voice. I pressed my free hand to my forehead. It's the way I say right." Mara sat up. I could hear it in the way her breathing changed. "Do you have your phone on you?" "Yes." "And it's showing incoming calls from your contact?" "Yes." "Okay, don't play the voicemails again. Not yet. Text me screenshots." And she stopped, then said, "Did you drink last night?" The question landed with a little sting, because it wasn't unfair. "I had 2 beers," I said, "at O'Shaughnessy's with you. I came home at 10:30. I watched half an episode of something. I fell asleep." Mara exhaled, like she was trying to keep her own voice calm for my sake. "Right, sorry. I'm not accusing you. Okay." Her name is Mara Lindstrom, 32, female. She's Swedish by birth, Chicago by choice, and she has the kind of steadiness that makes you realize how much of your own life is held together with tape. She works as a nurse practitioner at a clinic on the North Side, so she hears frantic voices all day and knows how to make them slow down. "What's your address again?" she asked. "I texted it to you 1,000,000 times." "I know, tell me anyway." "I did." "Do you feel safe?" she asked. I looked around my apartment. The chain lock on the door was still latched. The window was closed. The little pile of shoes by the entryway was exactly where it always was, like a photograph of my own laziness. There was nothing wrong that I could see, but the thing about waking up to your own number calling you is that it makes everything in your space feel like it could be wrong if you just looked at it from the right angle. "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel stupid." "Don't," Mara said. "Text me screenshots. Then plug your phone in. And don't answer it if it calls again." "What if it's—" "It's not you," she cut in gently. "It can't be you. We can figure out spoofing and carrier stuff later. Right now, just do you have a neighbor you trust?" I thought of Mr. Kowalski across the hall, who smelled like cigarettes and always held the elevator door with unnecessary drama. I thought of the couple downstairs who argued in Spanish like it was a sport. I thought of the landlord who only responded to texts when you threatened to withhold rent. "No," I said. "Okay, I'm going to get dressed and come over," Mara said. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "You don't have to." "I do," she said, and her voice softened on the last word. "Okay, just stay inside. Lock your door." I hung up and immediately felt the absence of her voice, like a drop in temperature. My phone sat in my hand, warm and heavy. The screen lit again. "Incoming call me." I watched it ring. My thumb hovered over the green button like it had a magnet in it. Part of me wanted to answer just to make the weirdness stop. Part of me wanted to throw the phone into the sink and run water over it until it drowned. The call stopped. Another missed call appeared at the top of the list, making it 38. I stared at the eye icon beside my own contact name. There were options: call back, message, FaceTime. I could also call my carrier, or the police, or do nothing and wait for Mara. But the missed calls were still there, stacked like evidence, and the voicemails sat in my inbox like sealed envelopes. A new text came in from Mara. Send screenshots. Don't answer. I'm on my way. I took screenshots with shaking fingers, call log, voicemail timestamps, and sent them. Then I plugged my phone into the charger, watching the lightning bolt icon appear like it was supposed to make me feel better. It didn't, because the phone kept buzzing, even on the cable, even while charging. May. I stood in my tiny kitchen with the morning light finally pushing through the blinds, listening to the radiator sigh and the far-off city wake up. And I realized I had a choice I couldn't unchoose. I could stay here and wait for Mara and let someone else take the first step into whatever this was. Or I could answer my own call. My thumb drifted toward the phone again, not touching, just close enough to feel the hum of another incoming ring through the countertop. And then it stopped, like it was waiting to see what I'd do. The calls stopped at 6:27, not tapered off, stopped, like someone closed a laptop. I stood there with the phone plugged in, watching the screen, waiting for the next vibration that didn't come. The quiet felt thicker than the ringing had, the way a room sounds after someone slams a door and leaves a shape behind. Mara texted on the bus, 12 min. I replied with a thumbs up I didn't feel and paced the length of my apartment. 8 steps from the bed to the kitchenette, 5 to the door. The floorboard by the closet creaked like it always did, which was weirdly comforting. The radiator clicked again. I kept noticing sounds and cataloging them as if normal noise could testify on my behalf. I didn't answer the calls. I didn't play the voicemails again. That was when the email came in. Subject: emergency contact verification. From Norripley at Verizon Support.com. The timing was neat enough to feel insulting. The message said there had been a request overnight to change account credentials associated with my number, and that some changes were pending. It asked me to confirm my identity within 30 minutes, or service interruptions could occur. 30 minutes from when wasn't clear, but the clock on my microwave read 6:41 a.m., and my chest tightened like it had done something wrong. I opened my carrier app. It made me log in again. My saved password didn't work. Okay, I said out loud, to no one. My voice sounded thin in the apartment. I tried the password twice more, slower. Still wrong. I hit forgot password. The app said it sent a verification code to my number. My phone sat there, silent. Of course, I muttered. I requested the code again. Nothing. I checked my email, no backup message, no text forwarding. It was like my phone had become a window instead of a door. I could see things happening, but nothing came through. I called the carrier's support line from the app. The automated voice chirped its way through menus like it was proud of itself. When it asked for the last 4 digits of my SSN, I hesitated long enough to notice my hands were shaking, and then said them. "Please hold," the voice said, and then there was music. Something smooth and bland with a bass line that pulsed just a little too close to my heartbeat. The hold timer ticked up. 3:12:4:05. My phone vibrated. I yelped a sharp, embarrassing sound and almost dropped it. "Incoming, call me." My breath went shallow. The carrier music played in my ear on one line. My own name lit up the screen on the other. I thought of Mara's voice, "Don't answer," and the adult part of my brain nodded along. The other part of my brain, the one that hates unfinished tasks and blinking notifications, screamed that if I didn't answer something, I was about to lose my number, my account, maybe access to everything tied to it. 2-factor authentication, banking apps, work email. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. I declined again. The hold music stuttered, then stopped. A human voice came on. "Thank you for holding. This is Jason with Verizon support. Can I get your name?" "Ellie," I said, too fast. "My account, someone's trying to change it. I can't get the verification code." "Okay, Ellie," Jason said, and his keyboard clicked faintly. "I do see a request initiated at 2:08 a.m. to transfer service to a new device. The verification attempts," he paused, "were completed." "Completed," I said. "By who?" "By the caller who verified account details," he said carefully, "including your SSN digits and billing zip." My stomach dropped in a slow, awful way, like an elevator skipping a floor. "That wasn't me," I said. There was a silence on the line, just long enough to register as concern instead of lag. "Okay," Jason said. "Then we need to lock this down immediately. I'm going to ask you some questions." My phone buzzed again on the counter, lighting up the kitchen. "May?" I turned it face down. Jason asked me where I'd been last night, what devices I owned, whether I'd ever shared account details, whether anyone else lived with me. Each answer felt like it took something away from me, like coins off a table. "Your service may be interrupted while we investigate," he said. "If the transfer completes, your number could go inactive on this device." "How long?" I asked. "It can take up to 24 hours, he said. I thought of everything tied to that number. My landlord, my boss, my bank, Mara. "Can you stop it?" I asked. "We can put a temporary freeze," he said. But if the verification was already successful, it may have propagated like mold. Another buzz, another missed call. Jason kept talking about escalation, about fraud departments, but my attention snagged on something small and wrong. The timestamps he mentioned. The transfer request at 2:08 a.m. My missed calls started at 2:03. "Jason," I said, "the calls from my number, are those in your system?" He paused. "Yes," he said. "I see outgoing call attempts originating from your number during that window." "From where?" I asked. "From a device registered to your account," he said. I stared at my phone. Which device? Another pause, longer this time. A new one, he said. An iPhone, activated overnight. My chest felt hollow, like someone scooped something out and forgot to put it back. I only have one phone, I said. I understand, Jason said. That's why this is a fraud case. The door buzzer went off, a harsh electric sound that made me jump. Mara's voice crackled through the intercom. Ellie, it's me. I put Jason on speaker and buzzed her in. My hands felt clumsy, like they belonged to someone else. Mara came in still pulling on her coat, hair twisted into a low knot, eyes already scanning the room. Okay, she said quietly. Start from the top. I held up a finger at Jason. Can you stay on the line? Yes, he said. Please don't hang up. I told Mara everything in a rush, the email, the password, the transfer, the new device. She listened without interrupting, jaw tight. So someone convinced them they were you, she said. Yes, I said, with my information. Do you think, she stopped herself, then said it anyway, that someone close to you could have done this? The question landed hard because it pressed right on my private fear. That I'm careless with people, that I let them too close and then act surprised when they take things. I don't know, I said. I don't think so. Jason cleared his throat through the speaker. There's one more thing, he said. The new device pinged a location during activation. My pulse kicked up again. Where? About 4 miles from your billing address, he said. Near the West Loop. Mara's eyes flicked to mine. That's close. That's too close, I said. Jason continued. If this is an active fraud situation, law enforcement may need to be involved. We can provide records. Do it, Mara said before I could. We're filing a report. Jason agreed and started the process. While he talked, Mara took my phone and scrolled through the missed calls, her thumb precise. Ellie, she said quietly, these calls, they weren't random. Look. She handed the phone back. The call times formed a pattern I hadn't wanted to see. Clusters every few minutes, then gaps, like someone was moving between places. Someone's using your number, she said, and they're nearby. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call. A text came in. From me. Message. If you want your number back, answer. Mara and I looked at each other. Don't, she said immediately. My phone buzzed again. From me. Message 10 minutes. Jason's voice was still on speaker, distant and procedural, talking about case numbers and next steps. 10 minutes until what? I felt the pull in my chest again, the need to respond, to fix, to not let tomorrow's version of me clean up another mess. Mara, I said, my voice low. If they have my number, my info, and a phone nearby, what do they want? She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to my door, the chain lock, the quiet hallway beyond. I don't know, she said, but I don't like ultimatums. The phone buzzed one more time. From me. Message last chance. And then, like the calls earlier, it stopped. We didn't answer. That was the first attempt, and it failed quietly. Mara set a timer on her phone for 10 minutes and flipped it face down on the table like a dare. We sat there listening to the apartment breathe, radiator ticking, someone upstairs dropping something heavy, the distant whine of traffic waking up on Halsted. When the timer went off, nothing happened. No explosion. No sudden blackout. No pounding at the door. For about 30 seconds, I felt foolishly relieved. Then my phone lost signal. Not dead, still on, still glowing. But the bars slid away one by one until there was just SOS only in the corner. The carrier app spun and then politely told me it couldn't connect. Jason called back immediately, this time on Mara's phone. The transfer completed, he said, no preamble. Your number is now active on the other device. So that's it, I asked. I just don't have a phone anymore. You have a device, he said. You don't have service. Mara rubbed her forehead. Can you reverse it? We've escalated, Jason said. But if the person controlling the number enables additional security pins, port-out protection, it complicates things. I laughed once, short and sharp. They're locking me out of my own life. Ellie, Jason said, and his voice did that careful thing again. I recommend filing a police report immediately. This is identity theft. We did. Online, because it was Chicago, and because the nearest precinct would tell us to do it online anyway. The form asked for times and dates and descriptions, little boxes that felt too small for the feeling in my chest. I typed while Mara paced, stopping every so often to look out the window like she expected someone to be there. That was the second attempt. Procedure, forms, proper channels. It failed with a confirmation email and no immediate help. Okay, Mara said, checking the time. We do something active now. Like what? I asked. My hands were cramping from typing. My head felt stuffed with cotton. Like going to the carrier store, she said. In person. West Loop, if that's where the device pinged. That's 4 miles, I said. We don't even know if that ping's accurate. It's a place, she said. Sitting here is. I didn't want to admit how much I wanted to move, to turn the panic into walking. Okay, I said. We layered up coats, scarves, boots, January asserting itself now that the sun was fully up. The hallway smelled like cleaning solution and old carpet. Mr. Kowalski nodded at us like it was any other morning. Outside, the cold slapped my face awake. The city looked ordinary in that aggressive way it has, like it refuses to participate in your personal crisis. We walked fast toward the bus stop, breath fogging, shoulders tight. Halfway there, Mara's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went pale in a way that didn't match the cold. It's the bank, she said, covering the mic. They're asking about attempted logins on your account. My stomach dropped again. On my account. They want to verify transactions, she said. She listened again, nodding. No, she didn't authorize that. I stared at my own useless phone in my gloved hand, suddenly aware of how much it had been doing for me without me noticing. The bus roared up, diesel fumes and heat blasting out as the doors opened. We got on, swiped Mara's card, sat near the back where the windows rattled. That was the third attempt, overlapping the second. Containment. Calling banks. Freezing accounts. We put holds on what we could, piece by piece, like plugging holes in a boat with chewing gum. Each call revealed a little more damage, attempted password resets, security questions answered wrong but close, like someone had studied me from a distance. On the bus, my phone buzzed even without service. A notification, not a call. From me. Message, you're making this harder. Mara read it over my shoulder. How is it texting without service? I don't know, I said. My mouth felt dry again. Wi-Fi. On a bus, she asked. I didn't have an answer. My chest tightened. I imagined invisible hands reaching through networks I didn't understand. The bus lurched, and for a terrible second, the lights flickered and went out. A woman yelped. Someone swore. My heart slammed into my ribs. Then the lights came back on. The driver shouted something about a loose connection, laughed it off. People settled. Misdirection, my brain whispered unhelpfully. Just a city thing. We got off near the West Loop Carrier store, a glass-fronted rectangle wedged between a gym and a coffee place already packed with laptops. Inside, it smelled like plastic and air freshener. A young employee with a name tag that said Ben listened to us with wide eyes. This happens, he said, trying to sound reassuring and failing. SIM swap fraud. They get your info, convince support they're you. Can you see the device? Mara asked. Ben tapped at a tablet. I can see it's active, he said. Not the serial without higher clearance. Can you disable it? I asked. He shook his head. Not without authorization from the account holder. I am the account holder, I said, my voice cracking. He winced. I know, I'm sorry. That was the fourth attempt. Authority in person. It failed with policy and a sympathetic shrug. As we stood there, my phone buzzed again. From me. Message, last offer. Meet me and I'll transfer it back. Mara grabbed my wrist. No, she said. We don't meet strangers who steal your identity. Where? I asked anyway, because the question was already burning a hole in me. Another message came in. From me. Message, you know where. I didn't, but my brain started supplying options. Places tied to me. Places that would make sense to someone who knew just enough. My work address, my gym, the bar from last night. O'Shaughnessy's was 10 blocks away. My private fear surfaced then, ugly and familiar. That my life is more readable than I think. That my routines are an open book. Mara, I said, they know me. She met my eyes. They know about you, she said. That's different. Another buzz. From me. Message 30 minutes. After that, I start closing doors. Doors like what? I asked the empty air. Mara made a decision I could see settle into her shoulders. We go to the police station, she said. In person, now. We walked fast, almost running, the city blurring at the edges. Halfway there, my phone vibrated again, not a message this time, but a notification from my email. Subject, password changed successfully. I stopped dead on the sidewalk. People flowed around me, annoyed. What? Mara said. They changed my email password, I said. The recovery email is gone. Mara swore under her breath. That was the point where something in me snapped, not loudly, but cleanly. Waiting hadn't helped. procedures hadn't helped. Running toward authority hadn't helped fast enough. I can't let them keep doing this, I said. Mara looked at me, searching my face. Ellie, they're already inside, I said. Every delay gives them more time. Another text came in, as if to underline it. From me. Message clocks ticking. I looked up at the street sign. We were 2 blocks from the station. The bar was 10 blocks the other way. I turned. Marta grabbed my arm. Where are you going? To where they think I'll be, I said. My voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. If they want a meeting, we make it on our terms. This is a bad idea, she said. I know, I said, but it's the only one that's left. I pulled my arm free and started walking. And for the first time since I'd woken up, my phone didn't buzz. Shaughnessy's was already open. That shouldn't have surprised me. Chicago bars bend time like that. But it still felt wrong to see the door propped with a black rubber wedge, the inside dim and yellow, and smelling faintly of bleach and old hops. The chalkboard out front listed a lunch special that hadn't changed in years. The street was busy enough to feel public, not busy enough to feel safe. I slowed without meaning to. My boots scraped grit. My phone was dead weight in my pocket, now no buzz, no glow, just the memory of vibration. Mara caught up to me, breath tight. Ellie, she said, please. I won't go in alone, I said. It was the truest compromise I could manage. She studied the windows, the reflections. We stand where the bartender can see us, she said. We don't follow anyone outside. If anything feels off, we leave. I nodded, already moving. Inside, the bar was half lit. 2 men in construction jackets sat at the end, heads together. A woman in a puffer coat drank coffee at the bar, phone plugged into an outlet by her feet. The TV over the bar played muted morning news, weather maps sliding over one another. Frank was behind the bar, wiping a glass with a towel that had seen better decades. Frank is 60-something male, with a back like a question mark, and eyes that miss nothing. He served me beers and sandwiches for years without ever learning my name, which somehow made me trust him more. Morning, he said. You look like you lost a fight with a bus. Coffee, I asked. He poured without answering. The mug was hot enough to sting my palms through the ceramic. We took stools near the middle. I set the mug down, wrapped my hands around it, waited. Minutes passed. The door opened and closed twice. Each time my shoulders jumped. Then my phone vibrated. Once, I pulled it out. The screen lit not with a call, but a text. From me. Message left booth, back wall. Mara's jaw tightened. No, she whispered. I'm not moving, I said, louder than I meant to. Frank glanced over. His eyes flicked to the phone, then to my face. You okay? Someone's messing with my phone, I said. It came out flat. He snorted softly. Ain't they all? Another vibration. From me. Message, you're closer than you think. My pulse thudded in my ears. I forced myself to breathe slow, to notice things. The hum of the fridge, the scrape of a chair leg, the smell of toast from the kitchen. A man slid onto the stool 2 down from me. Early 30s, male, clean jacket, too neat for the time of day. He didn't look at me. He set his phone on the bar, face down. My phone vibrated again. From me. Message: hi. Mara's hand found my knee, fingers digging in. Ellie, she murmured. I turned to the man. You can stop, I said. My voice shook, and I hated that it did. This is over. He smiled without showing teeth. I'm just here for coffee, he said, and raised his hands slightly, palms open. You're the one texting yourself. Frank paused mid-wipe. Hey, he said, no drama before noon. The man picked up his mug, sipped. His phone buzzed on the bar. My phone buzzed too. In sync, I felt something in my chest give way, not panic, exactly, but clarity. You cloned my SIM, I said. You got my info and convinced support you were me. That's it, right? The man shrugged. People leave breadcrumbs, he said. You'd be amazed. Why? Mara asked. He glanced at her for the first time, eyes sharp. Opportunity, he said. You lock people out, you get leverage. Numbers are keys now. Give it back, I said. He tilted his head. And you'll do what? Call the police. He smiled again. They'll write it down. Frank set a heavy hand on the bar. You gonna buy something, or just scare my customers? The man's smile faded a notch. He slid his phone closer to me. I'll transfer the number back, he said. You confirm on your end. We walk away. Mara leaned in. No, she said. You do it first. He laughed softly. That's not how this works. My phone vibrated. From me. Message: clock's done. I felt heat rush my face. Do it, I said, now. He didn't move. I did. I knocked his phone off the bar. It hit the floor with a sharp crack and skittered under a stool. For a split second, everything froze: the bartender, the construction guys. The TV weather map paused on a red blob. Then the man lunged. It wasn't cinematic. He grabbed my wrist. I grabbed back. The mug tipped, coffee splashing hot across my hand. I gasped, pain flaring. A chair scraped. Someone shouted. Mara was on her feet, yelling for Frank to call 911. Frank already had the phone to his ear. The man twisted, trying to break free. His elbow caught my ribs. Air whooshed out of me in a humiliating grunt. I stumbled, hit the bar hard, stars popping. The man dove for his phone. I kicked, missed, then kicked again, and felt my boot connect. He swore, sharp and ugly. Frank vaulted the bar with surprising speed and weight, grabbing the man's jacket and hauling him back. The construction guy stood, blocking the door without thinking. Sit, Frank barked. Sit down. The man struggled, then went still, chest heaving. Blood trickled from his lip. My phone vibrated one last time, then went dark. Sirens grew outside, distant, and then not. The lull that followed felt unreal, like the space after a wave breaks. The police took statements. The man, his name was Aaron, 34, said nothing. They cuffed him anyway, because Frank had the broken phone, because there were witnesses, because sometimes things line up. An officer, female, 40s, took my phone and looked through it with gloved hands. You did the right thing, she said, which felt like a lie you tell to get someone to stop shaking. At the station later, hours later, my ribs ached, and my hand throbbed where the coffee had burned me. The carrier rep met us there with a laptop and a weary face. The transfer was reversed. My number blinked back to life like it had been holding its breath, but it didn't feel like a victory, because when I played the voicemails again, later, alone, in the quiet of an interview room, I heard it. Under my own voice, under the static, a second breath, not supernatural, not impossible, just close enough to be mistaken for mine. And I realized how little space there is between being you and being used as you. The urgent care smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. They wrapped my hand in gauze, thin layers that made it look more injured than it was. First degree burn, the PA said, female, maybe late 20s, brisk and gentle, in the way you learn when people keep apologizing for being there. She pressed along my ribs, asked me to inhale. I did. It hurt, but not in a way that worried her. Bruised, she said. You'll feel it more tomorrow. I nodded, because nodding felt easier than admitting how hollow I felt now that the adrenaline was gone. Mara sat in the corner scrolling through her phone, jaw set, replying to messages she'd ignored all morning. She looked tired in a deeper way than lack of sleep, like something in her had been pulled tight and hadn't sprung back yet. When the PA left, Mara crossed the room and touched my shoulder carefully, like I might be made of glass. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For letting you go in there, she said. For not stopping you. I thought about the moment at the bar, the decision already made before I said it out loud. You couldn't have, I said. I was already there. She didn't argue. That felt like its own kind of understanding. The police took my phone for a few hours. They returned it with a plastic evidence sticker on the back that I peeled off and stuck to a receipt in my wallet, as if keeping it might matter. The officer who'd spoken to me at the bar, Officer Reyes, female, early 40s, explained the next steps in a voice that suggested she'd done this a lot and would do it again tomorrow. Charges were likely identity theft, assault maybe, depending on how the scuffle shook out. Aaron hadn't said anything new. He'd lawyered up quickly. His phone, cracked and scraped, was still bagged somewhere downtown. We'll be in touch, Reyes said. You did the right thing. I thanked her because that's what you do when someone closes a notebook and stands up. Back at my apartment, the radiator ticked like it always had. The floorboard by the closet creaked. Nothing had changed. That was the strangest part. Mara made soup from a can she found in my cupboard, clucked at the expiration date, ate it anyway. We sat at the small table, steam fogging the air between us. You staying? I asked. Tonight, she said, if you want. I do. She nodded and didn't make a big deal of it. I spent the afternoon on the phone, not my phone at first, but Mara's, locking things down. Banks, credit bureaus, email providers. Each call was a small confession. Yes, my information was compromised. Yes, I need to freeze that. Yes, I understand it will be inconvenient. When my own number came back online, the sound of it ringing felt different, like it had been through something without me. The carrier sent an email confirming the reversal, full of cheerful phrasing that made me want to scream. We're glad to have resolved your issue. I set a pin on everything. I enabled two-factor authentication wherever it existed. I wrote down backup codes and put them in an envelope in my freezer because someone once told me that was clever. In the early evening, my landlord texted to ask if the police visit meant anything he needed to know. I told him no. He replied with a thumbs up. Mara fell asleep on the couch with the TV murmuring to itself. I watched the city darken through the blinds, the familiar choreography of headlights and streetlights. It all looked the same. I kept waiting for it to feel safe again. Before bed, I opened my voicemail inbox. I hadn't listened since the station. My finger hovered the way it had that first morning. I deleted them. All three, no ceremony, just gone. It felt decisive and flimsy at the same time, like tearing up a photograph and realizing the memory doesn't need it. In the days that followed, life resumed in cautious increments. I went to work. I flinched when my phone buzzed. I stopped flinching quite so hard. My ribs bloomed into yellow-green bruises that faded. The burn on my hand peeled and healed. The bank mailed new cards. The carrier mailed a letter about additional protections. I signed up for credit monitoring I would forget to check. A detective called once to say the case was moving slowly. Erin had a prior for something similar in another state. That knowledge sat in my chest like a pebble. Mara checked in less often, not because she didn't care, but because hovering has its own weight. When she did call, she didn't ask if I was okay. She asked what I'd eaten. She told me about a patient who'd yelled at her for wearing the wrong color scrubs. We talked about small things. It helped. One evening, a week later, I was brushing my teeth when my phone rang. I stared at it, toothbrush hanging uselessly from my mouth. Unknown number. I answered, heart in my throat. Hello. There was a pause, then a voicemail, wrong cadence, wrong vowels. Hi, he said. Sorry, wrong number. I hung up and laughed, a short bark that startled me. Ordinary mistakes still existed. That was good to remember. Before I went to sleep, I did one last thing. I went into my contacts and changed my own name. From me to Ellie, this phone. It was a small, stupid thing. It made me feel better. Weeks later, the letter came about the court date. Mara offered to come with me. I said yes. Frank waved when I stopped by O'Shaughnessy's for coffee one morning, his eyes lingering a second longer than they used to. He didn't ask questions. Life didn't go back to normal. It went somewhere adjacent. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about the voicemails I'd deleted, about how easy it had been to hear myself and not myself at the same time, about how much of who we are lives in systems we don't see. Once, months later, my phone buzzed while it was face down on the table. Just a notification. A calendar reminder I'd set for myself. For a split second, my stomach tightened anyway. I picked it up, read it, breathed. Outside, the city made its usual noise. Inside, my phone was quiet. I set it down and went back to what I was doing. Almost ordinary. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going. Hey friends, it's your girl Mia. This is Mia Horror Stories. And tonight's story, I'm a fire lookout officer, and I saw something walking in the treetops, is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. The first thing I noticed wasn't the shape. It was the sound. A long, careful rasp, like someone dragging a dry branch across other branches, up high where the wind should have owned everything. The tower windows were cracked open for airflow, and the smell of sun-baked pine pitch floated in with the heat. My radio was hissing its usual faint static. A fly kept orbiting the rim of my coffee mug like it had a job to do. Then one clean snap. Not a gunshot, not lightning, a branch giving up. I leaned forward over the Osborne fire finder. The old circular sighting device bolted to the map table, and stared out through the glass toward the ridge. Late afternoon made the forest look deceptively soft, the slopes brushed in gold. Somewhere, a woodpecker hammered a steady rhythm, and farther down, I could hear the occasional whine of a truck on the access road muffled, like it was underwater. Whatever made that snap was too high to be a deer. Too placed. I told myself it was just wind doing something weird in the canopy. A crow lifting off. A dead limb finally letting go. Normal things that had explanations and didn't require me to call anyone and sound stupid. I reached for my binoculars anyway. The treetops swayed the way they always did, slow, breathing motion. But one cluster of firs near the saddle, maybe a mile and a half out, moved out of rhythm. Not big, not dramatic, just a little delayed. Like the trees, they were reacting to something that wasn't the wind. I brought the binoculars up, braced my elbows on the sill the way they taught us, and swept the line where the ridge dipped and rose again. "Come on," I muttered, not even sure what I was asking for. A bird, a bear, anything that would slot neatly into a category. Nothing. I lowered the binoculars and listened. The tower creaked once, a slow, settling complaint. My stomach did that mild, familiar roll. It always did when my body decided it might be smarter to be anxious than calm. That's when my phone buzzed on the desk. No service, as usual, but the vibration meant it was trying to do something, which was unusual enough to make me pick it up. The screen flashed. Emergency alerts. Test. A test alert. At 4:30 on a Tuesday. I stared at it longer than I should have, thumb hovering, as if the phone might explain itself if I looked hard enough. The county did tests sometimes, sure, but they usually did them at noon on Wednesdays, and they usually came through as a text later, when I drove down off the mountain and rejoined civilization. Up here, it was normally just me and my radio, and the occasional bored raven judging me from the railing. I set the phone down and looked back out at the ridge. Another snap. Then that dry, dragging sound again, closer this time. Or maybe my brain was just turning up the volume on everything it didn't like. "Okay," I said out loud, because talking to the air helped. "I hear you. My name is Evan Mercer, and for the past 2 summers, I've been a fire lookout officer in the Olympic National Forest, posted in a small tower that looks romantic in brochures and feels like a sun-warmed wooden box when you're actually living in it. I'm 29. I'm not an adrenaline guy. kind of person who double-checks the stove knob, even when I watched myself turn it off. I took this job because I needed quiet and structure after a bad year, and because I liked the simple honesty of it. You watch for smoke, you report what you see, you help keep people and trees from burning. No office politics, no crowded trains, no surprise hands on your shoulder in a bar. And yes, I know how that sounds, like I'm running away. I am, not from the forest, from everything that comes with being watched. I've always hated that feeling, eyes on me, expectations, being the thing somebody's evaluating. It's not a phobia, exactly. More like a fault line. I can hold it together until the pressure shifts, and then I get this sudden stupid urge to disappear into a bathroom stall and breathe through my shirt collar like it's an oxygen mask. Up here, nobody watches me. Nobody can. Except I kept thinking about that off-rhythm movement in the trees. My radio crackled, and the sound hit me hard in the quiet. "Lookout 7, this is dispatch." I thumbed the mic. "Dispatch, lookout 7. The voice that came through was familiar in the way voices get familiar when you hear them more than you see faces. Calm, a little dry, with the unhurried cadence of someone who talked down 100 panicked hikers. "Evan, you copy okay? You're coming in a bit scratchy." "Copy. Scratchy sounds right." I glanced at the antenna line as if I could will it into better reception. "What's up?" A pause, paper shuffling maybe, or the sound of someone turning in a chair. "Quick question," she said. "You get any weird alert up there? County test. Folks down low are calling it in." "I got a test alert," I said, and tried to keep my tone casual. "Emergency alert test, which is new for up here." "Yeah, that's what I'm hearing." Another pause then. "I'm logging it, probably nothing. You seeing anything? Smoke? Lightning?" I looked back at the ridge, at the shifting canopy, the late daylight sliding toward evening. The air still smelled dry. No smoke, no storm build, no reason for my pulse to be doing what it was doing. "No smoke," I said, "clear horizon. Just winds doing something odd on the saddle." "Wind doing wind things," dispatch said, gently teasing, but not dismissive. "Copy, keep eyes on." "Copy." Before I let go of the mic, I added, "Hey, who am I talking to?" I didn't catch. A soft exhale, almost a laugh. "It's Riley Chen, 34, female. Same Riley as yesterday, Evan." "Right," I said, embarrassed. "Sorry, long day." "Long week," she corrected, and there was a kindness in it. Then, businesslike again, "We've got a maintenance run planned tomorrow for your solar batteries. Might bump it up if we can. You're good up there." I glanced around my little tower room. Map table, cot, mini fridge, a stack of incident logs, my coffee mug, the fly that had returned, apparently unsatisfied with its earlier inspection. "I'm good," I said, "all set." "All right, keep your radio close." I almost laughed. "It's basically attached to me." "Good, dispatch out." The radio clicked back into static. I didn't like that last line. "Keep your radio close." It was probably just standard. But sometimes standard phrases hit different when your brain has already decided something is off. I went to the window again and scanned the ridgeline, slower this time. I tried to narrate it to myself like I was teaching someone. Trees, rock outcrop, patch of lighter green where the alder grows, no smoke, no hikers visible, no vehicle dust on the service road. I forced the inventory because inventories kept me from making stories. Still, my eyes kept returning to that saddle. There was a service trail that cut below it, rarely used, mostly by rangers, and the occasional lost mountain biker who'd ignored 3 signs and a locked gate. If someone was out there, they were somewhere they didn't need to be. I picked up the binoculars again. The glass was warm from sitting in the sun. I swept left to right, methodical. That's when something pale flashed between the upper branches, so quick it could have been sunlight catching a trunk, or a bird's belly, or the smooth underside of a snapped limb swinging. Explainable, except it moved against the sway. Not down, not up with the wind. Sideways, deliberate. I lowered the binoculars and stared without magnification, as if distance was the problem and not my own interpretation. The dragging sound came again fainter, but there, and then stopped like a hand clapped over a mouth. My phone vibrated again. No new alert, just the screen waking, searching for a signal it wouldn't find. I swallowed and stepped back from the window. Our had a logbook for everything: weather, visibility, smoke reports, wildlife sightings. I flipped it open and found the page for today. The pen felt too light in my fingers. 1638, unusual canopy movement near Saddle Creek Ridge. No smoke, possible falling limb. I hovered, then added, intermittent branch snaps. Source unclear. I didn't write. Something is up there. Because if you write it, it becomes a thing you can't unknow. Outside, the light shifted another notch toward evening. The forest got darker in the places where shadows pooled, and the ridge line sharpened like a cutout. I had a choice. That's what it boiled down to. Option 1, stay put, keep watching, report anything that became more obvious. The safe, correct, professional thing. The thing a guy like me was supposed to do. Option 2, call it in any way. Ask Riley to send a ranger to check the service trail. Risk being the jumpy lookout who cried weird wind and pale flash and wasted someone's time. I stood there, pen hovering over the logbook, listening to the quiet tower noises and the far-off truck whine. And underneath it all, that one unsettling absence. No more dragging sound, no more snaps, just the forest settling back into its normal rhythm like nothing had happened, which somehow made it worse. I set the pen down. I picked up the radio mic again, and I didn't press the button. Not yet, because once I did, it would pull someone else into whatever was happening out there. And I needed one more look first, one more sweep of the ridge, one more chance for reality to hand me an easy answer. I went back to the window, raised the binoculars, and aimed at the saddle. My finger rested on the radio button, ready either way. The decision got made for me by a sound I couldn't explain away as wind. 3 short bursts of static on the radio, then a clipped voice, too loud, too close, like someone had keyed up right beside my ear. Mayday, mayday, it cut out, came back, cut out again. I straightened so fast the chair legs scraped the floor. The tower gave a tiny groan like it didn't appreciate being startled. I thumbed the mic. Unit calling mayday. This is lookout 7, say again. Only static. Then, faintly, a different voice, female, strained, threaded through the hiss. Dispatch, Riley, I'm on the spur battery. And then nothing. My stomach did that drop again, but this time it was earned. I tried dispatch. Dispatch, lookout 7. I'm hearing a mayday, you copy. No answer. I tried again, slower, pressing the mic firmly like pressure could fix radio waves. Dispatch, this is lookout 7. Radio check, static. A pop. Then silence so clean it felt wrong. The tower radio had a little signal light that usually blinked like a heartbeat. It was dark. I stared at it for a second, stupidly expecting it to come back on by itself, like a person pretending not to be angry so the other person will apologize first. "Come on," I whispered. I checked the power panel by the door. The inverter display was dead. No numbers, no glow. The little fan that usually whirred softly under the desk had stopped. Even the fridge, normally a low, constant hum, was silent. Power outage. In a lookout tower in late afternoon, with the air dry and warm, and a ridge doing something weird in the treetops. I grabbed my phone. Still no service, of course. I toggled airplane mode off and on. Nothing. I opened the county alert again. Just the same test. No details. No follow-up. My first thought was the obvious one: solar batteries. Riley had said maintenance. Maybe something finally failed. Maybe it was just my tower, just my system. And my brain was turning it into a bigger story, because that's what my brain does when it smells uncertainty. Then I remembered the voice. Mayday, Riley's name. The spur. The spur road was the narrow cut that branched off the main forest access and led toward my tower and one other. The old Rock Ridge lookout, decommissioned, but still used as a relay point sometimes. If Riley or someone with her had been on the spur, they weren't down in town with redundant comms and phone service. They were up here, somewhere between trees and cliffs and bad shoulders in the road. I stood in the middle of the tower room and realized my hands were trembling, not dramatically, but like they couldn't quite commit to stillness. This was the part of me I didn't like. The part that needed to be watched to behave. When I was in college, I once froze during a kitchen fire. It wasn't even big. A skillet flare, a tongue of flame licking toward the cabinets. Everyone else moved, swore, grabbed baking soda. I just stood there with my brain buffering, feeling my own uselessness in high definition. Afterward, people joked about it. Evans got the 1,000-yard stare, and I laughed too. But the truth lodged somewhere deep. When something suddenly needs you, you might not show up. Up here, there was no one to cover for me. I took a breath, then another. I made myself move. The tower had backup, an old handheld radio in a drawer, meant for short-range use if I had to step outside. I yanked it out, flicked it on. The screen flashed, then went blank. Dead battery. "Of course," I said, and the words sounded sharp in the small room. Procedural failure, my failure. I should have been charging it. I should have checked it this morning like the checklist said. I hadn't, because it had been a quiet week, and I'd gotten lazy, and the quiet had felt like permission. I strapped on my boots, grabbed my field pack, and went through the motions with a kind of forced calm. Headlamp, first aid kit, water, energy bars, map, compass. The keys to the tower's old ATV hung on a hook by the door. I stared at them. The ATV was my only fast way down to the spur and back before dark. And the spur was exactly where the treetops had been moving weird. My brain tried to bargain. Wait until the scheduled maintenance tomorrow. It'll come back. Don't be the guy who panics and drives into the woods over radio static. Then I pictured Riley's voice, strained and breathy, the way it had said my name like she needed it to anchor her to something. I took the keys. Outside, the heat hit differently, less trapped, more alive. The tower's catwalk boards were warm under my boots. A gust moved through the crowns and made a long ocean sound, but it wasn't the same wind as earlier. This one was steadier, less playful. It carried a faint tang of dust and hot sap. I locked the tower behind me out of habit, like that would matter. The trail down from the tower was steep in places, the gravel loose. The ATV was parked under a tarp near the storage shed, its plastic seat sun-faded. I yanked the tarp off, swung a leg over, and turned the key. Nothing. I tried again. The starter clicked once, like a reluctant jaw. Then nothing. Dead battery. I just sat there for a second, hands on the handlebars, feeling a pressure behind my eyes that wasn't quite panic, but wasn't far off. It wasn't fear of the forest. It was fear of being trapped by my own unpreparedness. A small, humiliating laugh escaped me. Unbelievable. I got off, popped the seat compartment, checked the terminals. Corrosion. White crust. The battery cables looked like they'd been on a beach vacation. I remembered telling myself last week I'd clean them tomorrow. Tomorrow had arrived with an attitude. I looked toward the ridge again. The saddle was partially visible through gaps in the trees. From here, lower down, it was harder to see the canopy movement, but I could still sense that something in that direction wanted my attention. I pulled out my map. If I went on foot, following the service trail, it would take me, 40 minutes to reach the spur junction, maybe more if the grade was bad. And I'd be doing it while the day tipped toward evening, when everything in the forest shifted, temperature dropping, shadows stretching, sounds changing from birds to insects, and whatever else moved when humans stopped moving. I forced myself to think like a professional again. Time-sensitive problem. Possible downed ranger dispatcher maintenance crew member on the spur road with failing comms, fading daylight, and my own tower power offline. I couldn't call for help. I couldn't wait. I had to reach a point with signal, if there was signal, before the situation got worse. I started down the service trail at a fast walk that turned into a jog when the slope allowed it. The pack bounced against my back. Dust puffed around my boots. Somewhere behind me, the tower rose above the tree line like a finger pointing at the sky. 10 minutes in, sweat had made my shirt cling to my spine. I slowed, not because I wanted to, but because rushing makes you miss things, and missing things out here was how people twisted ankles, walked past injured hikers, stepped into holes they didn't see. That's when I saw the first sign that I wasn't alone. It was subtle at first, the smell of exhaust where there shouldn't be any. Not strong, just a faint metallic bite on the air, like a cold engine that had been running recently. Then a piece of plastic on the ground, black, curved, with a jagged edge lying beside the trail like it had been tossed. I crouched, picked it up. It was a fragment of a vehicle's side mirror housing. My throat tightened. "Okay," I said, even though no one asked. I kept moving, slower now, scanning the ground. A few more minutes, and the trail bent around a stand of firs. Past the bend, the trees thinned enough that I could see a slice of the spur road below through the branches. And there, half hidden by brush, was a white utility truck angled wrong, nose down in the ditch like it had tried to turn, and then decided gravity had better ideas. The driver's door was open. The passenger door was open too. No one was in the cab. I stepped off the trail, pushing through ferns. The air down there was cooler, damper. The ditch smelled like wet soil and crushed leaves. As I got closer, I noticed the truck's hazard lights weren't flashing. Power dead. Battery dead. Same theme. On the ground near the open passenger door, there was a clipboard, a spilled water bottle, and a smear of something dark on the gravel that made my brain hesitate before it allowed itself to label it. Blood, but not a lot. Enough to matter. My skin prickled along my arms, not from cold, but from the sudden intimacy of it. Someone had been here, hurt, and had left in a hurry, or been helped, or been taken. I fumbled my phone out, as if it might magically have bars down here. Still nothing. Hello, called, keeping my voice level. Forest Service. Anyone here? Only the forest answered. Insects, a distant bird call, the quiet tick of cooling metal. I moved around the front of the truck, peered into the ditch. There were tire marks that looked like a sudden correction, gravel sprayed. The mirror fragment made sense. Then I saw the footprints. 2 sets, clear in the soft shoulder where the dirt held them. One set was a heavy work boot, consistent with a utility worker or ranger. The other was different, narrower, deeper at the toe, like someone had been moving fast, leaning forward. And both sets led away from the truck, not toward the road back down, but toward the trees, toward the slope that climbed up toward the saddle, toward the place where, earlier, the treetops had moved out of rhythm. I stood there, listening to my own breathing, and felt the choice tighten around me like a strap. Follow the footprints into the woods while I still had light, and risk getting lost or hurt or running into whoever had left that blood. Or stay with the truck, conserve safety, and hope someone else came up the spur, even though comms were down, and my tower was dark, and Riley's voice had sounded like it was slipping away. I crouched by the clipboard. The top sheet was a maintenance checklist. The name at the bottom was printed in neat block letters, Riley CHEN, and beneath it, in smaller handwriting, a note that hadn't been there earlier when she'd spoken to me on the radio. Relay check at Rock Ridge. Signal irregular. Investigate. I straightened slowly. From somewhere higher up the slope, there came that dry, dragging sound again, branch against branch, followed by a single, careful snap. Close enough this time that I could tell it wasn't the wind. I tightened my grip on the flashlight in my pack strap and stepped toward the tree line. I followed the footprints uphill until the road noise vanished completely. The spur road sat maybe 50 feet below me now, hidden by brush and the curve of the slope. Above, the ground pitched steeply toward the saddle, an uneven climb through fir and alder, where the forest floor was stitched with roots and loose shale. I kept my pace measured, planting each step deliberately, the way they drilled into us during backcountry safety training. Hurrying was how ankles got wrecked. Ankles were how rescues turned into recoveries. The heavier boot prints were easy to follow at first. Work boots with deep lugs, scuffed at the toe. Riley's, almost certainly. The second set narrower, more forward-weighted, cut alongside hers in places, then drifted away, then came back again like whoever wore them couldn't decide how close to stay. That bothered me more than if they'd just stayed together. Riley, I called again, keeping my voice steady. The sound felt small once it left me, swallowed by trees and slope. No answer. I climbed for 10 minutes, maybe 15. Sweat darkened my shirt, and my thighs started to burn in that dull, complaining way that told me I'd misjudged the grade. Every so often, I stopped to listen, not because I expected to hear a reply, but because listening felt like control. The forest had shifted fully into evening mode now. The air cooled, thickened. Birds quieted. Insects took over with a soft, electric buzz. Somewhere off to my left, water moved Saddle Creek, probably running lower than usual this time of year, but still loud enough to mask footsteps if someone was careless. That was the first attempt. Follow the tracks cleanly. Reach Riley quickly. Get both of us back to the truck or to a point with signal. It failed when the prints disappeared. They led me to a patch of exposed rock just below the saddle, a slanted slab veined with quartz, bare enough that the dirt gave way to stone. The boot prints stopped dead there. I circled the area, scanning for scuffs or broken needles, but the rock gave me nothing. No direction. No clue whether they'd gone up, down, or sideways. I felt my jaw tighten. "Okay," I said quietly. "Think." I crouched and studied the slab more carefully. There, faint scratches near the top edge, like rubber dragged across stone. A slip. Maybe Riley had lost her footing. Maybe she'd slid. I moved around the slab and found the answer I didn't want. On the far side, the ground dropped sharply into a shallow ravine choked with brush. Not a cliff, but steep enough to turn a stumble into a tumble. Ferns bent downhill, crushed. A boot had skidded there, dirt scraped away in a long smear. "Riley," I said again, louder now, and started down. The ravine funneled sound strangely. My own breathing came back to me warped and doubled. The creek was louder here, the water knocking against rocks in a restless rhythm. I picked my way down, using saplings for balance, my calves trembling from the effort. Halfway down, my foot slid on damp leaves, and I went down hard on my knee. Pain flared sharp and immediate. I bit back a sound and stayed still for a second, hands pressed to the ground, letting the worst of it pass. When I stood, my knee protested but held. I flexed it experimentally. No pop, no instability, just pain and the promise of swelling later. "Idiot," I muttered to myself, to the situation, to the part of me that still believed I could muscle through everything if I just tried hard enough. At the bottom of the ravine, the footprints reappeared in soft mud near the creek's edge. The boot prints were uneven now, deeper on one side, limping. Relief hit me so fast it almost made me dizzy. She was alive, hurt, but moving. Then I noticed something else. The narrower prints were gone. Only Riley's boots continued along the creek, following the water downstream toward the saddle's far side. That was the second attempt. Stay on the obvious path, follow the creek, keep moving downhill where terrain was kinder and sound carried farther. It partially worked. I covered ground quickly now, adrenaline masking the ache in my knee. The creek curved gently, and I used it like a handrail, letting its course guide me. Then the smell hit, sharp, chemical, not forest, not rot or water or sap. Fuel. I slowed, scanning ahead. Around the bend, half hidden by brush, sat a small generator portable, the kind used for temporary power at relay points. It was off now, silent, but the air around it still held the stink of gasoline. Rock Ridge. I'd overshot the main spur trail and come at the relay from below, through the ravine. The generator meant Riley had made it here. Dee tried to check the equipment. Maybe the irregular signal she'd mentioned wasn't a glitch. Maybe it was this thing failing, or someone messing with it. I stepped closer and saw the problem immediately. The generator's fuel line had been cut. Not torn, not chewed, clean, deliberate. My mouth went dry. That was when something moved above me, fast and heavy, and my heart jumped straight into my throat. Branches shook high in the firs, way above head height. A rush of sound followed, leaves tearing, wood snapping, and for a split second my brain reached for the worst explanation, because that's what brains do when they're tired and scared and already primed. I froze, flashlight half raised. Then the The shape burst out of the canopy and crashed downslope in a chaos of limbs and leaves. A deer. It skidded to a stop not 10 yards from me, eyes wild, sides heaving. One hind leg dragged uselessly, bent wrong at the joint. It scrambled, slipped, then bolted again, crashing through brush toward the creek, leaving a churned path and a fading clatter behind it. I stood there, pulse hammering, and forced myself to breathe. Misdirection. Just an animal. Hurt, panicked, moving where it shouldn't because something else had spooked it, or because the generator noise earlier had driven it out of cover. Something else, my brain whispered, and I shoved the thought aside. I crouched by the generator, examining it more closely. The cut fuel line wasn't old. The edges were clean, not weathered. Someone had wanted this thing dead. I keyed my phone again, lifting it high, turning in a slow circle. One bar flickered on, then vanished. "Come on," I said, the word coming out ragged. I took a few steps uphill, then a few more, chasing elevation like it was a promise. Another bar, then two. I stopped, held the phone still, thumb hovering. Before I could dial, the screen went black. Dead. I stared at it, disbelief blooming into anger. I hit the power button again. Nothing. The cold had drained it faster than I'd expected, and I'd been using the flashlight too much. I was alone again. I sat back on my heels and laughed once, sharp and humorless. My knee throbbed. My calves quivered. The forest pressed in close, the light thinning by the minute. I needed to reassess. Riley had been here. She'd tried the generator. She'd been injured before or after. She'd left the relay point, following the creek downstream away from the spur road, away from the easy route back. Why? The answer came to me as I remembered the footprints near the truck. The narrower ones had gone uphill, toward the saddle, toward my tower. Whoever had cut the fuel line might not have been finished. I stood abruptly, a chill running through me that had nothing to do with temperature. If Riley realized someone had sabotaged the relay, and maybe the truck, and if she thought that person was moving upslope, she might have gone after them, or tried to warn me. I limped back toward the ravine's climb, ignoring my knee's protests. The path back up was worse in failing light. Roots turned into tripwires. Shadows swallowed depth cues. My headlamp cast a narrow tunnel of vision that felt more like a trap than help. Halfway up, my radio crackled. Just once. Burst of static, and then a voice, weak, distorted, but unmistakable. "Evan, if you hear this, don't." It cut out. I fumbled for the mic, heart pounding. "Riley, I'm here. Where are you?" Nothing. The signal light flickered once, then died again. That was it. The last fragile thread snapped, and with it went the option of turning back. If Riley was trying to reach me from upslope, if she was closer to the saddle now than the relay, then the only way to help her was forward. Up into terrain I didn't know as well, in fading light, with a bad knee and no reliable comms. Behind me, the ravine fell away toward the creek and the disabled generator. Ahead, the slope rose toward the saddle and the darkening treetops that had started all of this. I tightened my pack straps, adjusted my headlamp, and took the next step up without letting myself think about what would happen if I was wrong. Because turning around was no longer an option. The saddle was a thin, rocky seam between two drainage basins, and in the dark, it felt less like a place, and more like a decision the mountain had made a long time ago. Up one side, my tower, a few switchbacks away, perched above the canopy like a watchful tooth. Down the other, the ravine, the creek, the spur road, the dead truck, the cut generator. In the middle, wind that didn't quite have a direction, just cold intent. My headlamp beam bounced with every step. The light made the ferns look wet even when they were. My knee had stiffened into a steady ache that flared whenever I put weight on it wrong. I kept my breathing shallow so it wouldn't turn into that panicked gulping that always made me feel watched from the inside. A branch scraped somewhere above. Not snapped this time, scraped, long and careful. I stopped, listened. The insects had gone quiet. Not all at once, not like a movie, just less. The steady buzz thinned, then sputtered out in patches, as if the forest itself was holding its breath in small increments. "Riley," I called, and hated how small my voice sounded. No answer. I moved another 10 yards. The saddle opened up here, a break in the trees where rock pushed through. My lamp picked out pale stone, tufts of grass, and the leaning silhouette of an old, half-rotted signpost. No sign left on it, just nails and weathered wood. The kind of landmark you only noticed when you needed one. I swung the beam left, then right. Then I saw it. A strip of bright orange fabric snagged high in the lower branches of a fir safety orange reflective tape catching my light. A vest. Relief hit so hard it made my stomach clench. I pushed forward, ignoring my knee. "Riley." "Hey, Riley, it's Evan." The vest wasn't on a person. It hung there like a flag, torn at one shoulder, sleeveless and limp. Beneath it, the ground was scuffed. Dirt turned over. Needles scraped away in a rough half-moon. A drag. My lamp slid down the mark and found a boot print deep, uneven. Riley's. Then another print beside it, narrower, deeper at the toe. The forward-leaning runner. My chest tightened. Not supernatural, not impossible, just human. A human who moved fast and didn't want to be seen. I forced myself to think in plain terms. Someone sabotaged the generator. Someone ran a truck into a ditch or forced it there. Someone dragged Riley off the road toward the saddle. And I, because I couldn't sit still, because I couldn't stand being the guy who froze, walked right into the same funnel. I reached up and tugged the vest free. It came away with a soft rip, as if it had been caught there on purpose. The fabric was damp at the hem. My fingers came away sticky. Blood, not much, but fresh enough that it hadn't dried. My mouth went dry. I clicked my headlamp to its brighter setting. The beam widened, washed the rocks and trees in harsher light, and in that wider circle, I saw what I'd missed. A length of black cable stretched between two trees, low enough to catch ankles. A trip line. I froze so abruptly my knee screamed. If I'd taken 2 more steps at a jog, it would have taken me down hard. Face first into rock, maybe. Headlamp smashed. Me flat on my back with someone above me. The hair on my arms lifted, not with mysticism, just with the cold, practical awareness of being hunted. I backed up 1 slow step, then another, keeping my lamp angled down so it wouldn't silhouette me too brightly. "Hey," I said louder now. "I see your line. Nothing, no movement." The wind shifted, and with it came that faint exhaust smell again. Close, too close. A soft crunch sounded behind me. I spun, lamp snapping up. A man stood 10 feet away, partially behind a tree, the beam hitting his jacket, and then his face. He flinched, raised one hand against the glare. He was white, late 30s maybe, with a thin beard and a look on his face like he'd already decided what kind of person I was. In his other hand was a hatchet, not raised, not swinging, just present. "Turn it off," he said. My fingers tightened around my flashlight strap. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to get out of the conversation. "Who are you?" I asked, and my voice surprised me. It didn't crack. It didn't plead. It came out flat, like I was reading a line from a manual. He took a step toward the trip line, keeping himself on the far side of it. Smart. He de-set the geometry. He owned the space. "Turn your light off," he said again. "Or point it down." I pointed it down, keeping enough angle that I could still see his boots, the hatchet, the line between us. "Where's Riley?" I said. He laughed once sharp. "She's alive." My stomach unclenched a fraction, then tightened again. Alive meant not dead. It didn't mean safe. He nodded toward the dark beyond the signpost. "She slipped, hit her head. She's resting. You're gonna leave." "I can't," I said before I could stop myself. The honesty came out too fast, like it had been waiting behind my teeth. "Comms are down. My tower's dead. Her truck S in a ditch. Someone cut the generator line." His jaw clenched at the last part. A flicker, anger, embarrassment, something personal. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know it was cut," I said. "Clean, not chewed." He shifted his grip on the hatchet. The metal head caught a sliver of my light. This was the part where my brain wanted to do its old trick. Freeze, buffer, let someone else move first. I felt that familiar fault line open. The pressure shift. The urge to become very small and very quiet and let the mountain decide. But Riley's voice, thin through static, came back to me. "Evan, don't." I forced air into my lungs, forced words out. "Listen," I said. "If you're out here because you're hiding, because you've got an illegal camp or a grow op or whatever, you can leave. I don't care. I'm not a cop. I'm a guy in a tower. But you can't drag people into the woods and cut their lifelines." Eyes flicked toward the slope, as if checking something behind me. "I didn't drag her," he said too fast. "She came after me. She saw my truck. She started asking questions. So he had a truck. The crashed utility truck on the spur was hers, or at least connected, or he'd used it or forced it off." "You cut the line," I said. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. A faint sound drifted in from beyond the signpost. Not a branch, not wind, a human sound. A low, involuntary moan. My stomach flipped. "She's here," I said, and started to step around the trip line. "Don't," he snapped, and the hatchet came up just a little. Not a swing, a warning. My lamp wobbled. The beam slid across the ground and lit up something else, something I'd stepped over earlier without seeing. A small metal cylinder half buried in needles. A bare spray canister. Orange label, safety cap off. Riley carried it sometimes. Protocol for remote sites. She'd probably clipped it to her belt. It lay here like it had been dropped in a struggle. He saw my eyes go to it. His foot shifted. He was going to kick it away. I moved before my brain could talk me out of it. I swung my lamp hard right into his face. He cursed, reflexive, raising his arm to shield his eyes. The hatchet dipped. I lunged for the canister, knee screaming, fingers closing around cold metal. I thumbed the trigger. The spray hit him full in the cheek, and eyes in a wide orange mist. He made a sound I will never forget, not a scream, not at first. A shocked inhalation that turned into a wet, choking howl. He staggered backward, dropping the hatchet, both hands clawing at his face. I didn't stand there to admire it. I vaulted the trip line, caught my boot, stumbled, almost went down. But I kept my feet and ran toward the sound of Riley. The light caught her behind a cluster of rocks 10 yards past the signpost. She was on her side, knees drawn up, one arm wrapped around her ribs. Her face was smeared with dirt and blood at the temple. One eye was swelling shut. "Evan," she rasped, like she couldn't believe I was real. "I'm here," I said, dropping beside her. "Can you move?" she tried, and pain flashed across her face. "Ribs, I think." She sucked in a breath and went pale. "He hit me, tried to take my radio." Okay," I said too quickly. "Okay, don't talk, we're going." Behind us, the man's coughing turned into retching. He was stumbling, blind, crashing into brush. "Bear spray didn't knock you out. It bought you minutes. Painful minutes, but minutes." Riley's hand grabbed my sleeve with surprising strength. "He's got a second line," she whispered. "Down by the ravine he wants," she swallowed hard. "He wants to burn it, cover it." He said nobody cares about a little smoke. My blood felt hot in my ears. A fire threat. Here, now, with comms dead. "No," I said. "No, no, no." I slid my arm behind her shoulders and helped her sit up. She hissed, teeth clenched. Her weight sagged into me. "We go to the tower," I said, "higher. If we get line of sight, maybe radio, maybe something." "My radio," she started. "Gone," I said. "Mine's intermittent, phone's dead." "We walk." She nodded once, small. We started moving, half carrying, half stumbling up the saddle toward the switchbacks that led to my tower. My knee was a burning hinge. Riley's breathing was shallow and fast, pain chopped. Behind us, the man crashed again, closer. He'd recovered enough to move. Bear spray didn't stop determination. Then a new sound cut through everything. A crackle, small at first, like someone crumpling cellophane. I looked back. At the edge of the ravine, down slope from the saddle, a thin ribbon of orange light had appeared under the trees. Not sunset, not reflection, fire, low and creeping, licking at dry needles. He'd done it anyway, or he'd tried. Match, a lighter, a flare, anything. And the wind, steady now, leaned into it like it had been waiting. Riley saw it too. Her good eye widened, and something in her face hardened through the pain. That's the line back," she whispered. I understood immediately. If that fire grew, it would cut the ravine route, cut the spur road, cut any easy escape. It would also throw smoke that my tower was built to detect, but my tower was dead. My radio was unreliable, and I was the only one who could see it right now. The man stumbled into view again, face red and wet, eyes squeezed shut, groping. He had the hatchet back in his hand. He swung it blindly at branches as he moved, not to cut, but to keep us from getting too close. We were caught between a man and a fire in a forest that hadn't burned yet this season, but wanted to. I tightened my grip around Riley. "Keep moving," I said. "Don't stop." She nodded, jaw clenched, and we pushed uphill into the dark toward my tower, toward whatever power I could coax back to life. Behind us, the crackle grew louder, and the smoke began to rise. The helicopters arrived just after midnight, their rotors chopping the dark into pieces. By then, the fire was contained mostly. A low, creeping ground burn that had eaten a shallow arc along the ravine before crews cut a line and smothered it. It never crowned. It never ran. On paper, it would be a footnote. Human-caused ignition, limited spread, quick response. On my body, it felt like something else entirely. They got Riley down first. 2 EMTs moved with practiced efficiency, voices calm, hands sure. They slid her onto a backboard, taped her down gently, but firmly. She kept apologizing, breathless and faintly embarrassed, like she'd spilled something expensive. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I should have, you're okay," allowed one of the medics. a woman with a low voice and tired eyes. "You're okay. Let us do the worrying." Riley's eye was nearly swollen shut now. The cut at her temple had been cleaned and bandaged, but she was pale in that way that made everything look a half step away from wrong. When they lifted her, she found my hand and held it hard. "You didn't freeze," she said. "You came." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. They wrapped my knee next. Compression, ice. A quick assessment that turned into a longer grade 1 sprain, maybe a minor tear if imaging later wanted to be dramatic. Nothing heroic. Nothing that would make a good story. The deputies took the man away in cuffs. He didn't look at me as they passed. His eyes were red and swollen, his face blotchy where the bear spray had done its work. He smelled like smoke and sweat, and something sour underneath it all. One of the deputies, a tall guy with a shaved head, asked me to identify the hatchet. I did. I pointed. I spoke like I was reading a grocery list. They found more things later in the daylight. A makeshift camp hidden deeper upslope. Fuel cans cached under a tarp. A map with hand-drawn marks where there shouldn't have been marks. Enough to make the charges stick. Enough to make the report thick. The legal words came later: assault, sabotage, attempted arson on federal land. They said he'd been living out there for months, maybe longer, avoiding permits, avoiding people, using the forest like a blind spot. The truck, Riley's, had surprised him. He'd panicked, tried to control the situation the only way he knew how. Control. That word showed up a lot. They shut my tower down for a week. Power inspection. Equipment review. Mandatory rest. Someone higher up clucked their tongue at my uncharged handheld radio, wrote a note about procedural adherence, and then, quietly, thanked me for not waiting. Riley texted me from the hospital 2 days later. Ribs bruised, not broken. Mild concussion. "I look worse than I am." I wrote back, "You look like someone who got hit in the head by reality." She sent a single laughing emoji. Then, "Coffee when I'm cleared." Anytime, I typed and meant it. When I went back up to the tower, the forest looked the same in the ways that matter and different in the ones that don't. The fire scar was a dark smear along the ravine, raw and ugly, already smelling faintly sweet as it began the long process of becoming something else. The saddle was quiet. The trip line was gone. The nails in the old signpost remained. I logged everything: weather, visibility, the faint haze that still hung low some mornings when the air settled just wrong. I slept badly at first. Every branch snap felt personal. Every shift in wind carried a question mark. I caught myself scanning the treetops more than the horizon, listening for patterns instead of smoke. Then, slowly, the routines did what routines are supposed to do. The radio hummed. The inverter glowed. The fly returned to orbit my coffee mug like we had an appointment. One afternoon, I took the binoculars and aimed them at the saddle, not because I thought I'd see anything, but because avoiding it felt like giving something power it didn't deserve. The trees swayed. Wind owned them again. Still, sometimes, when the light was just right, and the canopy moved out of rhythm for a second longer than it should have, my hand would hover over the radio button without me realizing it. I never stopped pressing it. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going.